This podcast of the Equine Forum is brought to you by the University of Louisville Equine Industry Program at the College of Business. It all begins in 15 seconds right after this word from our podcast sponsor.
The University of Louisville Equine Industry Program at the College of Business is now offering a graduate certificate, which can be completed in 15 or 30 weeks and be done as a standalone or used as 20% of your MBA. Classes at both the undergraduate and graduate level are forming now for August.
This is HRRN, horse racing's voice.
And Fusa Ichi Pegasus runs by the front runners, and he's pulling away, and he is pulling away impressively. Red Bullet left behind, Country only third, Aptitude fourth. Fusa Ichi Pegasus will roll into Kentucky as the favorite in the Derby.
Fly so free and strike the gold in the center of the track. It's Strike the Gold moving by and getting the lead from Fly So Free. Strike the Gold in the center of the track is drawing away. Fly So Free is second. Then on the inside, that's no work, all play, but it's Strike the Gold. He's going to win the Bluegrass. Strike the Gold drawing out.
Welcome to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires.
And California Chrome is absolutely sensational. California Chrome will be carrying the hopes of California all the way to the Kentucky Derby. He waltzed home under Victor Espinoza.
And it's spectacular. It's taking the lead by a length and a half. Along the inside, General Assembly is second. Flying Pastry drops back on the outside. Golden coming on. But there's a 16th of a mile to go. And Spectacular Bid is going to win the 105th running of the Kentucky Derby.
Now, here's Mike Penna.
Good morning once again, everyone, and welcome to the show that launched a network. It is the Equine Forum, and it is all right here on the Horse Racing Radio Network, and all presented by our friends at TwinSpires. Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch, excited to have you starting your Saturday morning with me once again right up until 11 a.m. Eastern on Sirius 162 XM 207, our affiliates in Lexington, Louisville, and across the country, and streaming worldwide and podcast on our website, horseracingradio.net, or wherever you access your podcasts. This has really been a special week here on HRRN, as we have taken time to celebrate and recognize one of the greatest horses of all time. In the words of his trainer, Bud Delp, the greatest horse to ever look through a bridle, referring to the brilliant Spectacular Bid. And throughout the week, you've enjoyed tributes to Spectacular Bid on all of our shows, along with our social media pages and our website. And Kentucky Senate Majority Leader Damon Thayer tweeted to us on Thursday that Spectacular Bid's win in the 1979 Florida Derby is the race that got him hooked on horse racing. He even remembers that race being broadcast on ABC's Wide World of Sports with the late Jim McKay hosting the coverage. Spectacular Bid had a profound influence not only on the sport, but on people's lives. And I want to thank Keeneland Sales for making this week possible through their sponsorship of the special week, which really is the perfect fit when you consider that Spectacular Bid is a graduate of the 1977 Keeneland September sale. And among his victories during his 3-year-old campaign, 2 years after being sold at Keeneland, were the Bluegrass, the Kentucky Derby, and the Preakness. He was campaigned by Hawksworth Farm, and he would go on to win 13 Grade 1 races. He won 26 of 30 lifetime starts with earnings of more than $2.7 million, which, of course, in today's numbers would have been much, much higher. Going to visit with Keeneland announcer Kurt Becker coming up later in the first hour at 8:35 Eastern. And his Stroll Through Racing History segment, which he brings your way every week at 10:20 here on the show, is going to pay tribute to the great Hall of Famer. But really looking forward to talking with Kurt about Spectacular Bid and about what's coming up at Keeneland this weekend. This is the first Spectacular Bid week this week, the first in a series of horse weeks presented by Keeneland Sales that you're going to enjoy over the next couple of months. And we're going to recognize more legendary Keeneland Sales graduates. Derby week is going to be Winning Colors week here on the network. All week long, April 29th to May 4th, we will celebrate the 1988 Kentucky Derby heroine. And June 3rd to the 8th, we'll celebrate AP Indy with AP Indy Week. Another Keeneland Sales graduate will recognize the accomplishments of the 1992 Belmont Stakes and Breeders' Cup Classic winners. So stay tuned for those. There will be more in the second half of the year leading up to the Breeders' Cup as well. But our thanks to Keeneland Sales for helping to put that together with us and recognize some of the great thoroughbreds in the history of thoroughbred racing. Is today's 100th anniversary edition of the Bluegrass the strongest Derby prep that we've seen this year? Possibly. There are people saying that. At least at the top, I think you can make that argument. Risen Star winner, Sierra Leone. You have Dornoch, winner of the Fountain of Youth last time out. And Gotham runner-up, Just a Touch. Those are the big three. After that, I think it gets a bit ordinary. That doesn't mean a star won't emerge from somebody other than the top three I just mentioned. But right now, those are the three standouts in the Bluegrass Stakes. And maybe that's enough to make people say this is the strongest Derby prep we've seen this year. We're still waiting for somebody to step up and say, I'm the one to beat. Robert Clay with Grandview Equine is enjoying quite a ride again this year. He's going to be with me at 9:20 Eastern. He is the breeder of Dornoch. He also bred his full brother, Mage, who won last year's Kentucky Derby. So there is an opportunity that Robert Clay could go back-to-back as a breeder in the Kentucky Derby. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't think it's ever been done before where you've had full siblings both win the Kentucky Derby. I don't even know if it's happened with half siblings. But I'll talk to Robert Clay coming up at 9:20. He joins me for Kentucky Bred. Owner-breeder John Stewart, who was very active at the sales this past year, announced on Twitter yesterday that there is now a third sibling in the pipeline as he welcomed a colt by Good Magic out of Puka yesterday. That is the same exact pedigree as both Mage and Dornoch. So now we have a third colt out there. Wouldn't that be something? Best of luck to him. So the Bluegrass is loaded. You have the Wood Memorial Day. You have the Santa Anita Derby. You're going to spend a lot of time talking about that. What are the chances the Arkansas Derby winner, Muth, makes his next start at Churchill Downs on the first Saturday in May? If you haven't been following along this week, the Churchill Downs Bob Baffert saga kind of continued, but this does not really have anything to do with Bob Baffert. I guess maybe indirectly, but not directly here. The LA Times reported that owner Amir Zidane, the owner of Muth, has filed a lawsuit against Churchill Downs Incorporated asking for injunctive relief, which would allow his Arkansas Derby winner to compete in this year's Kentucky Derby with Bob Baffert as his trainer. What are the odds the ruling goes in Zidane's favor and this actually happens? Remember, as of now, Muth, who won one of the biggest Derby preps of the season, unable to participate. And that's the poll question today. You can go to our Twitter page, at HRRN. You can go to Horse Racing Radio Network on Facebook. Or you can email the show, mike@horseracingradio.net, and let me know your thoughts. And here it is. Will Arkansas Derby winner Muth make his next start in the Kentucky Derby for owner Zidane Racing and trainer Bob Baffert? Give you two. We're going to make it real simple here, too. Give you two choices. Yes, it's a lock, or no chance. Those are your two choices. Is it going to happen? Will we see Muth beneath the TwinSpires on the first Saturday in May? I want to know your thoughts. Again, you can weigh in on our Twitter page, at HRRN. You can do the same thing on Facebook. Just go to Horse Racing Radio Network there and email the show. If you don't do social media, email me your thoughts on this situation. Are we going to see Muth make his next start in the Kentucky Derby for Zidane Racing and trainer Bob Baffert? Yes, it's a lock, or no chance. And I can see this going a couple ways. I think the longer shot here is that it actually happens. But then again, I'm not a judge. I'm not involved with the process here, certainly. That's that is not my level of expertise. I can promise you that. But I can also see a scenario playing out where if the judge is going to deny this, one of the reasons I could see brought up would be, okay, Mr. Zidane, you and all of the other owners who have horses in training with Bob Baffert knew what you were up against after the initial ruling that Bob was not going to be allowed to participate. And you had an opportunity by a certain date in January to move your horses to another trainer. You chose not to. So no, there is no injunctive relief to allow your horse to participate because you knew what you were getting into here. You had the opportunity. You denied that chance. I can see it going that way, and I think that's maybe the more likely scenario. But there are people, as I've read through some of the stories, that think maybe this is a 50-50 proposition. Maybe this thing actually has a shot. I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. But I want to get your thoughts. What do you think? Are we going to see Arkansas Derby winner Muth make his next start in the Kentucky Derby? Yes, it's a lock, or no chance. That's the poll question here this morning. All right, here's the show. Here's what's coming up. Hour 1, in just a few minutes after this first break, going to welcome the Pontiff of the Pick 4 to the program, Pope Jude. He has his Pope Jude sheet out there for the weekend. You can go to popejude.com and download that and get all the insight from the Pontiff on all the big races coming up. But he's going to talk a little racing with me. He's going to look ahead, too, to our Derby countdown shows, which come up Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning of Derby week. Doing those for many, many years. They're presented by our friends at Hillendale at Alapa, and we're going to bring those your way again during Derby week, live from the backside of Churchill Downs to get you ready for all things Kentucky Oaks and Kentucky Derby. So that comes up in just a few minutes. Kurt Becker will join me at 8:35 Eastern Time. 9 o'clock, going to welcome Miguel Clement, the son of Kristufek Clement. He works alongside his father. They have Deterministic, the morning line favorite in today's Wood Memorial. I'll get a chance to talk to Miguel at 9 o'clock. Again, 9:20, Robert Clay for this week's edition of Kentucky Bred. Jeff Chapman going to join me at 9:40 Eastern. He is the VIP player host at Santa Anita, so he'll get a chance to walk through the Santa Anita Oaks, the Santa Anita Derby, and a couple of the other races on the West Coast later today. Joe Kristufek will be here with the TwinSpires Triple Play to kick off hour number 3 at 10 o'clock. 10:20, Kurt Becker takes you on his weekly Stroll Through Racing History and that wonderful remembrance of Spectacular Bid in that segment later today. And at 10:30, I Ask, They Answer with Dale and Tim. Dale Roman's Tim Wilkin, where I hit them up with some of the hottest topics in the sport of thoroughbred racing, and I'm going to ask them their thoughts on the situation surrounding Arkansas Derby Muth and owner Amir Zidane. I'll see what they think. That's the poll question for you, but I'm going to see what Dale and Tim think as well when they join me at 10:30 Eastern. The other thing I'm going to ask them is the same thing I'll bring up to Jude Feld here in just a couple of minutes. We saw Fierceness put in a tour de force victory, winning by more than 13 lengths in the Florida Derby. And we know the Florida Derby has historically been the number one prep race for producing Kentucky Derby winners. It's unparalleled. Behind it is the Bluegrass Stakes, but it's been a long time since any horse has come from the Bluegrass. 07, Street Sense, to win the Kentucky Derby. And the Wood Memorial has 20, but you have to go back to 03 and Funny Side to find the last horse to run in that race before winning the Roses. So it hasn't happened for those two stalwarts, but it has happened for the Florida Derby. And Fierceness dominated the competition. And say what you want about the field. Maybe it wasn't the strongest Florida Derby we've ever seen. But if you're Ohio State football and you're opening up your season against a Division III team at home, you're supposed to beat them by 60 or 70 points. If you win by a field goal at the last second, well, maybe something's wrong. Fierceness was supposed to win that race. He was the horse to beat, and he performed the way he was supposed to perform. He took care of his business. It was impressive. So does that make Fierceness the undisputed horse to beat on the first Saturday in May? Or does it now make him the perfect horse to play against in the Kentucky Derby? Will he bounce off of that big effort? He's kind of been one of those horses that when you look at his past performances, runs a big race, runs a not-so-big race, runs a big race, runs a not-so-big race. So he comes into the Derby off maybe the biggest race of his career, the biggest victory. Ultra impressive. Do you play against him, or does it make you believe in fierceness even more and say, yep, they're not beating him when we get to Louisville? I'll ask Dale and Tim that question. I'll ask Jude Feld that question here in just a moment when he joins me on the Equine Forum presented by TwinSpires on HRRN, horse racing's voice.
You're listening to HRRN, horse racing's voice.
Race the TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Fans, we really do have a great weekend of live racing lined up at Santa Anita Park. Today, of course, is the big day as we present the 87th running of the Santa Anita Derby. Among the leading contenders expected for this year's Santa Anita Derby are Mayman and Imagination for trainer Bob Baffert and Stronghold for trainer Phil D'Amato. A tremendous day of racing that features 4 other stakes, including the 85th running of the Santa Anita Oaks. A special wager will also be offered today called the Big 3 Pick 3 that consists of the Wood Memorial, the Bluegrass Stakes, and the Santa Anita Derby. A tremendous day of racing also includes Santa Anita's Derby Day 5K, a spring carnival in the infield, and a Santa Anita Derby Beer Festival. First post time today is 12 noon. The Easter egg hunt will now take place tomorrow, Sunday, April 7th, in addition to Fiesta de Santa Anita in the infield. For more information, go to santanita.com. The top jockeys, the top trainers, and world-class racing are all here at the great race place, Santa Anita Park.
There are thrills around every turn at Gulfstream Park during the Royal Palm Meet with live horse racing action Thursday through Sunday and simulcast opportunities 7 days a week. Come out and enjoy weekend stakes races, including the Royal Palm Juvenile on the road to Royal Ascot. Take in the action from the Carousel Club or feast in Ten Palms Restaurant with an elevated view of the track. For stake schedules, tickets, and more, head to GulfstreamPark.com.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Fierceness, he is getting away. He's now 4 in front. Catalytic is second. Grandmo the first is third. On the outside, Frankie's Empire, Conquest Warrior at the rail, but they all have too much to do. Fierceness is putting on a show in Hallandale today. Fierceness, the real Fierceness, has showed up to South Florida, and he's crushing them in the Florida Derby. Fierceness geared down and on his way to Louisville. Fierceness authoritatively in the Florida Derby. He's never had a threat. Catalytic was second. It's a very close photo for third between Grandmo the first and Conquest Warrior. Hades to complete the high five in 1:48.1.
Pete Aiello with the call of last weekend's Florida Derby. The real Fierceness showing up big time in Hallandale Beach, dominating the competition in that Grade 1 Derby prep, winning by more than 13 lengths. Yeah, he's pretty good. Is he now the horse to beat when we get to Louisville, or does that performance make him the perfect horse to bet against in a 20-horse Kentucky Derby field? Welcome back to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires here on HRRN. Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch, with you on this Saturday morning right up until 11 a.m. Eastern. And I now have the privilege of welcoming my dear friend, the Pontiff of the Pick 4, longtime partner here on the network. He is back. That means we're getting close to a big race. Well, it's a big weekend here with the Derby preps and a big race coming up on the first Saturday in May, too. Jude Feld, the Pontiff. JT, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, man. Great to hear your voice and looking forward to talking about this Derby picture. Let me start with asking you the question I just posed to everybody. What do you think? Does that effort, winning by more than 13 lengths and doing it so impressively, does it make Fierceness the undisputed horse to beat, or does it make him a good horse to look at maybe playing against?
Well, you know, Damon Runyon said it may be the race is not always to the swift, but that's the way to bet. And there's no question in my mind the fastest horse in the Derby this year is Fierceness. He's number one on the Kentucky Derby leaderboard. And I think that race was a tremendous confidence booster. I think the switch to Johnny V was a good one. They just let him run. I mean, instead of trying to be all cagey and save this or do that, just let the horse run. He's the fastest horse. You go to the lead, and that's it. And that's what he did. And I was really impressed with that race, and I think it's a great starting point for a tremendous Triple Crown run for him.
We've been waiting for a horse this season to step up and say, I'm the one to beat when we get to Louisville on the first Saturday in May, and to really show that star quality, that brilliance. Fierceness is really the only horse to have done that so far. He did it in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year, and then he does it again in the Florida Derby. And, yeah, I understand exactly where you're coming from here. There's nobody else that has shown that type of brilliance so far, other than maybe Nisos early in the season. But, of course, as we know, not only is he off the Derby trail, but he was never on it because he can't run in the race.
Right. Well, they always talk about breakout performances in sports, like the pitcher that throws a great game and it's his first great game of his life, and the running back that been languishing in second or third place on the depth chart, and he goes out and runs for 200 yards or something, and people go crazy over that. And horse racing X doesn't seem to really like the fact that Fierceness won so easy, which is kind of strange. But that's horse racing for you. People love to make a big score, and they think the Derby's their chance for a life changer, and sometimes it is, but a lot of times the best horse wins, and Fierceness is definitely the best horse. Whether he wins or not, there's so many things that can befall you in the Kentucky Derby. You never know what's going to happen. What post you get, how the break goes, where you end up early on in the race. But I mean, he's got the speed to outrun everybody if he wants to. So that's always a good thing.
Well, we also saw the Arkansas Derby last weekend. Muth, that whole situation is still up in the air. We have no clue what's going to happen there, whether he'll be participating in the Derby or not. But the other race that took place that was another 100-point race last Saturday was the UAE Derby in Dubai. And Forever Young, the Japanese bred, just continues to show up every time they lead him over. Doesn't matter where it is, and he continues to win. Do you think Forever Young is a legitimate player this year for Japan in the Kentucky Derby?
Well, I'm always skeptical of the horses coming from, the desert and making all these trips. And, of course, Forever Young, he's from Japan. He went to Saudi Arabia and won over there. And I was at dinner at Frank and Dino's on Thursday night with some international horse racing people that write and cover racing all over the world. And they were very high on Forever Young. So it made me take a second look at him, because I respected their opinions. And, he's definitely a horse to be reckoned with if he can handle all the travel. I know he's had some travel issues in the past, and coming to Churchill Downs is not the easiest thing for a horse to do, coming from Dubai. So we'll see what happens. But, I mean, you have to respect his ability and his talent.
Where do you stand on the Louisiana Derby winner, Catching Freedom?
I don't stand on Catching Freedom. The other horses that I like, Sierra Leone. I've been a Sierra Leone guy. He's very resolute when he runs. He trains like a tank. I mean, I don't know if you've seen any of his training, but he just looks like a beast. I like him. I like his style. He runs good every time. And the other one is Dornoch. I mean, you and I were lucky enough to see Big Brown break his maiden on the turf, and that carried us all the way to the last race of the Triple Crown. I mean, we were Big Brown guys. We saw Uncle Mo win at Saratoga, and he went on to do some good things, although he wasn't a Derby horse. But I mean, Dornoch has speed, and he's got that Big Brown on the bottom side. So, I mean, I think he's a horse that could be reckoned with. But if Fierceness runs away he ran, then Dornoch's probably not going to win.
how great would it be if we were to see a rematch later today at Keeneland? Well, it's a rematch because Sierra Leone and Dornoch met in the Remsen Stakes a couple of starts ago in December at Aqueduct. But that was a race where they hooked up in the stretch, and it looked, for all the world, like Sierra Leone was going to blow right past Dornoch, and Dornoch found another gear, and he's so gritty when he gets hooked in the stretch. He battled Sierra Leone all the way down to the wire. He ends up winning by a nose that day, does Dornoch. How cool would it be if that unfolds again at Keeneland later today?
Yeah, that would be cool. I mean, that's why we run the races. It's great to see these horses square off against one another and see who's best. And we might have some clarification this afternoon, after the Bluegrass. But, I'm all in favor.
Yeah, it would be wonderful to see. Talking with the Pontiff of the Pick 4, Jude Feld, Pope Jude, if you will, here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. Jude, I mentioned earlier that you have put out your Pope Jude sheet for the races this weekend. Folks can go to popejude.com and they can download the sheets and they can read your analysis. What other races at Keeneland really caught your eye looking ahead to this afternoon?
Well, it's a really good card. I mean, yesterday was really nice. I thought they did a great job putting together the opening day card, and today's no different. I mean, there's a lot of cool races today. I think the Commonwealth Stakes is an interesting race. I like Wyco a little bit. He's trying graded company for the first time, but he's a pretty good horse. I think it'll be interesting to watch him run. And then Cherie DeVoe, she's got Vava, who won the Lexus Raven Run at Keeneland during the fall meet, and she's coming back today in the Madison, which is a grade 1, and she's a pretty nice filly. I've been watching her works, and they look pretty good. So those are probably the two that I'm most interested in.
How about up in New York? The Wood Memorial is the featured event at Aqueduct later today. Deterministic, I'm going to talk with Miguel Clement coming up at 9 Eastern, the son of Christophe Clement. Deterministic is the 7-5 morning line favorite for those connections in the Wood Memorial. Joel Rosario back aboard. Lightly raced, but he really became a buzz horse after that win in the Grade 3 Gotham. Do you like him today?
Well, he's run 7 furlongs in a mile. He's never gone 2 turns. So this will be kind of an acid test. I mean, I'm sure he'll give his best effort, but I like to, he's going to be a short price and he hasn't done it before. So that's always a dangerous proposition. I mean, you really have to believe in the horse to do that. And there's some other horses in the race that have some speed and could be a factor in there. It's kind of an odd race. I really didn't have anybody that I super liked in there. I think Uncle Heavy was the horse that I kind of liked the best because he's kind of a finisher and his Brisnet speed figures are pretty solid. So I thought he had a chance. But Wood Memorial Day is always a good memory for me because Wicked Strong made a big score that day. I always remember that race. It has a soft spot in my heart, but I couldn't find a Wicked Strong this year.
Gamblers, horse players, it's always so great. You remember a lot of times your affection for an event or a race or a game or a team comes back to the fact that you cashed a bet on them, right? I mean, that's just kind of the gambler's thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in horse racing, you get a certain affection for certain horses as you go along, and a lot of times it's tied to gambling, but not really all the time. I mean, sometimes you just really like a horse, and you have those memories of certain races. Like I mentioned, you and I watching Big Brown break his mane on the turf, and we're just looking at one another like, what the hell was that? It was just fantastic performance, and I remember Eric Gates Travers at Saratoga, and the Big A and I were sitting next to one another, and we were just shaking our heads. I mean, never saw a horse run like that. I looked at the board, and I saw the time was under 2 minutes, and I go, gee Louise, that's crazy. He just ran through the bridle that day, and he went on to be such a great horse and a great sire. So, that really didn't have much to do with gambling. It was more the performance that was just breathtaking.
Yeah. 24 days from today, you will be sitting in our broadcast position on the backside of Churchill Downs in the media area alongside Bobby Newman to bring our listeners our Derby Countdown shows. Those will take place April 30th, May 1st, and May 2nd, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of Derby week. Sirius 161, XM 206 is where those shows will be heard, but folks can see that on our website. But, Jude, those are shows that, man, we have been involved with for a long time, and it is always so much fun to talk Oaks, to talk Derby, and to do it with the connections and handicappers and people that are going to be involved in those races. It is really a good time.
Yeah, well, a lot of times people wish they could be at Churchill Downs, in the morning for the workouts and see the horses and the trainers and all that, which is always fantastic to be on the backside prior to the Derby. And we try to do our best to bring everybody that's driving to work and going through their day to Churchill Downs and have them enjoy the experience with us. And I really enjoy those shows, and Bobby does a great job of hosting, and the guest list is always good. We have really interesting people to talk to, and so it's a lot of fun.
Those shows presented by our friends at Hillendale at Alapa. Again, Sirius 161, XM 206 will be where you can find those shows from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning of Derby week beginning April 30th. Pontiff, always great to catch up, and look forward to seeing you in a few weeks at Churchill Downs. We're going to have a lot of fun, and good luck at the windows later today.
Yeah, we'll do our best. I'm really looking forward to it.
Should be great. The Pontiff of the Pick 4, Jude Feld, Pope Jude. Again, download his sheet at popejude.com and get all of his insight for not just the Triple Crown and the Derby preps later today, but for all of the big races coming up throughout the afternoon. When I come back, I'm going to look back on the career of the Great Spectacular Bid. I'll do that with Keeneland announcer Kurt Becker. He'll also share some thoughts on what's coming up at Keeneland later today. All of that ahead right after your Legends of the Turf and this short commercial break.
There have been match races and there have been match races in thoroughbred racing. Some have fizzled, some have turned into classic confrontations of the equine sport. On October 20th, 1923, there was one that by anybody's measure or means falls into the latter category. On that date in the Roaring Twenties at Belmont Park, 50,000 patrons were amassed beneath a brilliant yellow sun on a mild autumn day, with Mother Nature having reached down with tender tendrils to paint the surrounding countryside in the brilliant hues of the season to see a horse race. There had been large crowds at Belmont in the past, but never of the size of the assemblage gathered on that day. This one came filled with patriotism and the sporting instinct. It was an event amongst events. The enormous crowd was overflowed from the clubhouse into the grandstand and on out across the lawn, and provided the exclamation point to one of the greatest spectacles in all the annals of sport. The purse was $100,000, the racing surface muddy, and the combatants were the great Zeb, Harry F. Sinclair's American standard bearer, to be piloted by the redoubtable Earl Sandy, and the superb British representative Papyrus, with Steve Donahue handling the lines. Zeb went posted at 4 to 5, Papyrus even money. Papyrus had several excellent workouts since arriving in America. Zeb had not been at his best of late, having incurred a skin ailment, but on this day, in this race, they both performed like the champions that they were. From a standing start, Papyrus got away very quickly, jumping on out to a length and a half lead before the two had gone a single furlong. Zeb, slow to settle into stride, made up the ground quickly and dropped down along the rail under Sandy. By the time they had gone a quarter, Zeb had gained the lead and was full of run. Sandy took a strong hold and was rating his mount nicely. At the half-mile marker, it was Zeb by a length, and on down the backside they went in the 10-furlong race with Donahue on Papyrus, asking his stalwart for just a bit more, while Sandy, in turn, let out a notch on Zeb, holding on to a one-length lead as the two thundered into the far turn. They continued to hold their positions in what had become a cat-and-mouse game between riders and horses on around the turn, with Donahue and Papyrus unable to close any ground. It looked at that point as if the courageous British champion was indeed a beaten horse. As they swung off the turn to the head of the stretch, Zeb increased his margin under the astute handling of Sandy. Bending low, Sandy appeared to cluck and whisper something into Zeb's ear, and he began to widen his margin as a huge roar swelled up from the vast multitude in attendance. Zeb ate up huge chunks of ground with giant strides. Papyrus fell further behind. They had only a furlong to the wire, and it was Zeb by 4 open lengths. As they galloped to the finish with Zeb in full command, sending sprays of mud up before the noisy crowd, Sandy guided the conquering hero home magnificently with every leap, ultimately winning by 8 open lengths. It was a stirring performance by Zeb, and the single most crushing defeat ever suffered by the British great Papyrus. The Rancocas colt of Harry Sinclair had not run a particularly fast race, but under the handy guy named Sandy, he had proved himself to be an international champion and had upheld the honor and prestige of American racing. Zeb versus Papyrus, Belmont Park, October 20th, 1923. A great moment in racing.
You're listening to HRRN, horse racing's voice.
Race the TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Tenda Equine and Pet Care products have been keeping world-class equine athletes happy and healthy for generations. Keep your equine athlete looking and performing well with Tenda Next Generation Wound and Skin Care Treatment, along with nutritional supplements, leg and muscle care products, salves, hoof care, poultice, topical aids, and grooming products. Visit tendahorse.com today.
You're listening to Spectacular Bid Week on HRRN. Presented by Keeneland Sales.
When the spring meet ends, summer success begins. Buy, sell, fresh winners, hot prospects. One night, one chance. Finish strong. Don't miss out. The Keeneland April Selected Horses of Racing Age Sale. Friday, April 26th.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN. Presented by TwinSpires.
Franklin whacks him with a whip, and he draws out to lead it by 4. Lot of Gold is going to be second, and that's the way this race is going to end. It is Spectacular Bid coming to the line with his ears pricking, and as he hits the wire, he is 5 lengths the winner over Lot of Gold second.
Official margin of victory 7 lengths, and trainer Bud Delp would tell anyone who would listen to bet on his horse the first Saturday in May.
I was glad to see that it was a short field since it was just 9 days before the Derby is back at that time, and I really wanted an easy race, which he got. You know, he went to the lead on the backside, and he was loafing on the turn. We let him do that, and he didn't run a enormous time, but he came back out of that race so fresh that he was just that much better for the Derby.
Welcome back to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on this Saturday morning. The 100th renewal of the Bluegrass Stakes coming up later this afternoon at Keeneland, part of a trio of Derby prep races with the stakes extremely high, looking ahead to Louisville 4 weeks from today. The audio you just heard, courtesy of our friend Tom Leach, the voice of the UK Wildcats, it comes from a show that he produced, a top 10 look at the Bluegrass Stakes, or the top 10 Bluegrass Stakes of all time. The call you heard there in that clip as we were coming back was from the legendary UK broadcaster Kaywood Ledford. It came from the Keeneland Radio Network. Kaywood calling Spectacular Bid's victory in the Bluegrass Stakes, and then his trainer Bud Delp commenting after the race, looking ahead to the Kentucky Derby. All week long here on the network, we have been celebrating Spectacular Bid Week, presented by Keeneland Sales, the first in a series of horse weeks coming your way this year, presented by Keeneland Sales, recognizing and celebrating some of the most legendary Keeneland Sales graduates, and Spectacular Bid certainly falls into that category. And nobody knows that better than my good friend Kurt Becker, who you'll hear on the microphone at Keeneland once again later this afternoon. He is with me now here on HRRN. Kurt, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Mike. It's good to be on with you.
How great was it to hear K-Wood's voice on that call?
I tell you, that was one of my favorite parts of researching Spectacular Bid's career, because K-Wood Ledford, he was an incredibly accomplished sportscaster, Kentucky native, and someone who not only was known in the world of horse racing and as the voice of the UK Wildcats, but for many years did the Final Four. He was the play-by-play announcer for Westwood One's radio coverage. I remember listening to him covering the Final Four on radio back in the early 90s. And, it was a lot of fun to be able to go back and remember K-Wood.
You are such an incredible fan of the history of thoroughbred racing. I consider you one of the great racing historians because you love to go back and research different storylines from yesteryear. Spectacular Bid. I mean, you look at his accomplishments on the racetrack, a winner of 26 of 30 lifetime starts, more than $2.7 million in earnings. And I said earlier, by today's dollars, that number would be a lot higher. But you look at his 13 Grade 1 wins. If we're celebrating the greatest Keeneland Sales graduates of all time, he's right at the top of the list.
He really is. And it's surprising to me that as long as I have worked at Keeneland, and I've worked here since the late 1990s, Spectacular Bid is, for whatever reason, he's not always a name that pops up as a Keeneland Sales grad. I guess because we have sold a number of horses that have won classic races and champions and so forth. But whenever you and I sat down, Mike, a few weeks ago and said who would be a good Keeneland Sales grad to highlight that's won the Bluegrass, you and I both even said at first, well, Spectacular Bid, we think he was a Keeneland graduate, was he or wasn't he? And sure enough, he was. But I think sometimes part of the reason that maybe he doesn't always immediately come to mind, if you go back and look, he was originally the breeders of that horse wanted to put him in the Keeneland summer sale, the July sale. And of course, the July sale in that era was considered the best of the best on pedigree and conformation. And actually, the Keeneland sales department looked at Spectacular Bid's maternal family, and they said, the dam side of the pedigree probably isn't quite up to the standards that we normally hold folks to for the July sale. Would you put him in the September sale instead? Which they did. So he actually is not only a Keeneland sales grad, but came out of the September sale, which of course is now the flagship yearling sale.
Yeah, the 1977 Keeneland September sale, and then 2 years later, we know he would go on to win the Bluegrass Stakes. He would win the Kentucky Derby. He would win the Preakness, and as I mentioned, 13 Grade 1 victories in his incredible career. It has been so much fun this week to share YouTube videos of his race, his biggest victories, but the race calls, too, are something that strike me when I listen to the announcers describe Spectacular Bid, whether it be Dave Johnson or whoever the announcers were in some of those races. The incredible, it's almost like in the tone of their voice, Kurt, they're in awe of Spectacular Bid watching him run.
I would agree. And, you're talking about a list of announcers that had seen a lot of fantastic horses in that era and in that decade. I mean, you mentioned Dave Johnson. There's a good example. A lot of people forget that Dave was the track announcer for the New York Racing Association and actually did the track call for Secretariat's Triple Crown clinching win in the Belmont. The Chick Anderson call is the one that we always hear from CBS television, but Dave actually did the track call. So, I mean, here's just one example of an announcer that, he had been in New York at the time that Secretariat ran, and Dave, by the time Spectacular Bid ran, he was the caller at Santa Anita. And I think that if you go back and listen as a 4-year-old in 1980, when Spectacular Bid broke the world record on dirt at Santa Anita for a mile and a quarter, in 1:57.4. You could hear Dave on the gallop out when he checks the time, and you could just hear the change in his tone of voice when he sees how fast that race went. It was just amazing.
This is just the beginning, too. Spectacular Bid Week, the first in a series of horse weeks we're going to bring to our listeners over the next few months and all the way through the Breeders' Cup, for that matter. Derby Week, April 29th to May 4th, we will celebrate the great Winning Colors, winner of the 1988 Kentucky Derby, another Keeneland Sales graduate. And Belmont Week, June 3rd to the 8th, will be AP Indy Week. All of those presented by our friends at Keeneland Sales. And it's wonderful to recognize those Keeneland Sales graduates, but even more importantly, to recognize some of the greatest horses that have ever set foot on the racetrack.
And you mentioned Winning Colors. I mean, there's a filly who, for some of us, really was a reason that we got interested in the thoroughbred game. And every time her name comes up, I have to smile because I grew up in a standardbred family, and I can remember that my folks would always pay attention to the Triple Crown time of year, and I had just started my announcing career. In fact, in the spring of '88, when she was a 3-year-old, I was actually in Lexington announcing harness races at the Red Mile. And there were a lot of racing officials at the Red Mile who were big fans of thoroughbred racing. And a gentleman who was head of publicity at the Red Mile, a man by the name of Tom White, he had a Derby party at his house that afternoon, first Saturday in May 1988. And I can remember he had all the racing officials over. We had the race that night. We had like a 7:30 post time at the Red Mile. But Tom had everybody over to his house, and he had an old console-style television that he got an extension cord. He rolled it out on the back patio. And, I mean, I was fascinated. And then to see this filly, not only a filly beating the boys, but just the gritty, tough way that she had to hold off 49er. I remember that day just being mesmerized and thinking, man, it would be a lot of fun to be involved with that sport.
That is the other thing I love about presenting these horse weeks for our listeners, because I said this earlier, Kentucky Senator Damon Thayer had seen the post of Spectacular Bid winning the 1979 Florida Derby that we had shared on our HRN Twitter page, and he commented to us that that was the race that got him hooked on horse racing. He even remembered the race being broadcast on ABC's Wide World of Sports with the late Jim McKay hosting the coverage. So much like Winning Colors with you, Spectacular Bid had that same type of impact on now Kentucky Senator Damon Thayer, and it's wonderful to see the way that these special horses have impacted people's lives.
They do. They do make for some lasting memories, and there's something about the athleticism and the way some of these horses can, in some cases, overcome adversity. In other cases, they can put together these amazing win streaks, and they really do. They capture the heart, and it's one of the great things about this game.
Let me shift gears with you for just a moment, visiting with Keeneland announcer Kurt Becker here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. We saw a pretty good one yesterday in the Ashland with Leslie's Rose, who is now on her way to Louisville for the first Friday in May, and the Kentucky Oaks. What did you make of that performance yesterday?
I thought that was a really solid performance. I thought going into that race, there were so many angles to look at. You had the return of the champion, just FYI. You had Candide, who had won the Grade 1 Alcibiades over the Keeneland racetrack last fall. And I thought going in that maybe the Juddmonte filly Impel might prove the best yesterday, even though she had never been in a stake, much less the Grade 1. She had been so impressive in her first couple of starts. But I mean, this filly that Mandy Pope owns, Leslie's Rose, she left no doubt. When she made that move, it wasn't like it really wasn't much time to even think about it. All of a sudden, you look up and she's got the lead and she's gone. So I thought it was an excellent performance, and I heard Todd Pletcher say after the race yesterday, the filly's trainer, he pointed to the fact that the race yesterday was 1 mile and a 16th. Of course, the Oaks is 1 mile and an 1/8, And he said, we've thought all along that this is the kind of filly that the longer we stretch out the distance, the more she's going to like it.
You will have the privilege this afternoon to be calling 5 graded stakes races as part of that Keeneland Saturday program. There are 2 grade ones with the Madison and the Toyota Bluegrass Stakes. That Bluegrass, there are many people saying on social media and on other platforms that it might be the strongest Kentucky Derby prep race we've seen so far this year, with Sierra Leone and Dornoch squaring off. It's a rematch for them. Talk a little bit more about this year's Bluegrass field and what you'll be watching for throughout the race.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned Sierra Leone and Dornoch, and they certainly on class look to be the best of the bunch. But you've got some other great stories in there. One of the horses that I've heard some talk about, I chatted with a few people yesterday at Keeneland before the races, and the name of Just a Touch came up a time or two, and someone pointed out to me, I was actually talking to Scott Hazelton from FanDuel TV, and Scott said, you look at this horse, he's only made a couple of starts, he's run well both times, and I think both times Scott had mentioned he was on a sloppy sealed track, and he said, I think these connections have been waiting for the chance to get Just a Touch onto a fast track and see what he can do. So that's a name that has come up. You've got a Godolphin horse in there, Encino, who's run well, but he's been running on synthetic, and he'll try dirt for the first time today. I heard the segment that you and Jude Feld did a moment ago, and you guys were talking about fierceness from Mike Rapoli and trainer Todd Pletcher. Well, those same connections, they've got BU going out today, a horse that just broke his maiden, incidentally. But there's another for the Rapoli barn that goes in the Bluegrass today. Someone else mentioned Good Money, the Calumet horse. That maybe there's not a lot of early speed in this race. That perhaps either he can go out and maybe grab the lead at a big price and try to go all the way, or if not that, Dornoch is a horse that can certainly be up front early. Maybe Good Money can take a little bit out of Dornoch if he goes out and presses the issue. So. I don't think it's a done deal on any horse's count by any means. I think it's a wide open race, and a 2-1 morning line favorite in Sierra Leone kind of reflects that.
Kurt, folks are going to hear more from you, not just this afternoon at the races when they tune into Keeneland, but they're going to hear more from you later in the program coming up at 10:20 Eastern when you take them on another Stroll Through Racing History. You produce those segments every single week. They are fantastic. We get so many wonderful compliments. They add so much to the show, and I really want to thank you publicly for all your hard work there. Those segments, too, presented by our friends at Keeneland, and can't wait to hear this week's story on Spectacular Bid.
Well, and I appreciate that, Mike, and thanks to our producer, Lee Delapina. I know that as we've gone through the month of March and into April, we've changed up. Sometimes I'll send Lee some audio, and then we'll decide to do a different horse and move the first horse to a different week. So a big thanks to our producer, Lee, because he does a great job.
Kurt, I appreciate the visit, my friend. Enjoy Bluegrass Stakes Day. It's one of the great days on the racing calendar every year, and can't wait to hear your calls this afternoon.
Mike, thank you so much. It's always fun, and a great day of racing across the country, so everybody enjoy.
Kurt Becker here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. When I come back, we'll continue to talk about this year's Derby picture. It's time for Calling All 3-Year-Olds, presented by Spendthrift with Bobby Newman, and I'll get you ready for what's ahead in Hour 2 and Hour 3. This is the Equine Forum on the Horse Racing Radio Network.
The Claiming Crown is returning to Churchill Downs Saturday, November 16th. Make plans to be part of the Claiming Horse version of the Breeders' Cup, showcasing 8 Claiming Crown races offering a minimum of $100,000. Each race will also offer a Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund purse supplement for registered Kentucky breds.
An invaluable goes all the way up top to win at a length and a half.
Eligibility request deadline for the Claiming Crown at Churchill Downs is Saturday, October 26th. Learn more at claimingcrown.com.
Woodford Feed, where tradition merges with technology. Family owned since 1940 and providing exceptional customer service, Woodford Feed specializes in the highest quality feed, using only the finest ingredients to ensure optimal nutrition for your horses. In addition, Woodford Feed can help with all your farm needs, including field seed, fertilizer, and weed control. So whether your horse is sprinting around the racetrack or has a foal by her side, count on Woodford Feed to provide the quality nutrition necessary to perform at the highest level. Woodford Feed, Versailles, Kentucky.
Retirement can be scary, but only if you're not prepared. That's why AARP created thisispretirement.org. Because unless you've already retired, you're in pretirement, and you still have time to plan. Learn about retirement savings options, potential tax breaks, and how you can build savings over time. Visit thisispretirement.org for free resources to help you customize your action plan and feel the retirement fear disappear. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Want to get the latest HRRN content directly on your computer or mobile device? Then subscribe to our podcast using the Podbean app or Apple Podcasts. Just go to hrrn.podbean.com on your computer and click follow, or download the Podbean app and search HRRN. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts and listen to our latest episodes anytime. Don't miss a thing. Subscribe to our podcasts today. You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
They're all in line. And they're off.
Spendthrift Farm presents Calling All 3-Year-Olds with Bobby Newman.
There were 3 major races on the Kentucky Derby Trail last weekend. At Gulfstream, 2-year-old champ Fierceness got back to his A-game and trounced the field in the Florida Derby by over 13 lengths. He and runner-up Catalytic are both headed to Kentucky. At Oaklawn, the Arkansas Derby was once again Bob Baffert's playground as Muth shipped in to take the $787,000 first-place prize. He's not eligible to run for the Roses, but second-place finisher Just Steel is planning for the first Saturday in May, along with third-place finisher Mystic Dan if he gets in. In Dubai, the undefeated Forever Young used a nice stalking trip from the outside before grabbing the leader in the stretch and eventually drawing off to win the UAE Derby. He, too, is headed for Churchill Downs. 3 more biggies today, starting with the Grade 1 Bluegrass at Keeneland. Graded Stakes winners Sierra Leone and Dornoch had a strong field of 11 traveling the 9 furlongs. At Aqueduct, the Grade 2 Wood Memorial sees Graded Stakes winners Deterministic and Uncle Heavy take on the undefeated Tuscan Sky amongst the field of 13. And out west, Bob Baffert's Imagination and Phil D'Amato's Stronghold lead a field of 8 in search of the $750,000 purse in the Grade 1 Santa Anita Derby. Next week is the final chance to earn Kentucky Derby points, the Grade 3 Lexington at Keeneland. I'll be back with this week's top 5 list right after this word from Spendthrift.
Looking for an exciting classic winner to breed to in 2024? Look no further than Mo Donegal. A leading 2-year-old of his class, Mo Donegal won the Grade 2 Remsen Stakes to close out his juvenile campaign before going on to win the Grade 2 Wood Memorial and Grade 1 Belmont Stakes as a 3-year-old, joining Nyquist as classic winners by Uncle Mo.
And it will be Mo Donegal to win the Test of the Champion, the Belmont Stakes.
Mo Donegal's first foals are arriving now and receiving rave reviews. Get the classic chromosomes. Mo Donegal, standing at Spendthrift.
This week's top 5 list of Derby contenders looks like this. Number 5, Mystic Dan, trouble trip in the Arkansas Derby, but ran on well. The added distance ought to help him. Number 4, Deterministic, looked great in winning the Gotham. We'll learn more about him today in the Wood. Number 3 is Fierceness. The 2-year-old champ crushed him in the Florida Derby and is clearly fastest when he runs one of his good ones. Number 2, Forever Young. The Japan-based runner is undefeated despite shipping all over the world. Now it's on to Kentucky. And number 1, Sierra Leone, won the Risen Star despite possibly not liking the wet track. Should be favored in the Bluegrass today at Keeneland. That's your Calling All 3-Year-Olds segment presented by Spendthrift, the Breeders' Farm.
And a couple of Derby updates for you from this morning. Endlessly, winner of the Jeff Ruby Stakes at Turfway, returned to the work tab working 49.60. An easy half-mile move for trainer Michael McCarthy, the son of Oscar Performance, is still possible to compete in the $5 million Kentucky Derby on the first Saturday in May. Rebel Stakes runner-up Common Defense breezed a half-mile in a pretty swift 47.80 outside of stablemate Real Men Violin. And McPeak's other top 3-year-old Mystic Dan tentatively scheduled to ship to Churchill Downs from Oaklawn in the coming days, according to assistant trainer Greg Geyer. Don't forget, too, our Derby Countdown shows. You heard Jude talk about them earlier in the program. They begin Tuesday, April 30th, live from Churchill Downs, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Different Sirius XM channels for those shows, but you can check out all that information on our website at horseracingradio.net. Plenty coming up in Hour 2 and Hour 3, including Miguel Clement, set to join me in just a couple of minutes to talk about Wood Memorial favorite Deterministic. You're going to hear Kentucky Bred with breeder Robert Clay. Jeff Chapman talking about the races at Santa Anita, 9:40 Eastern. The TwinSpires Triple Play with Joe Kristufek at 10. Kurt Becker Stroll Through Racing History at 10:20. Dale and Tim at 10:30 with I Ask, They Answer. All of that coming up in Hour number 2 and Hour number 3. Stay with me. Back with Hour 2 after this pause for Station ID.
This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires.
Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch, back with you to begin Hour number 2 of 3 here on the Equine Forum, all presented by TwinSpires. Covered a lot of ground in the first hour of the program. Looking forward to the next 2 hours as well. Plenty more content coming your way on what is a massive weekend for thoroughbred racing. The road to the Kentucky Derby coming to an end, and it ends with a crescendo with 3 major prep races later today. You have prep races for the Kentucky Oaks as well. Let's not forget about the girls, but the boys in the spotlight with the Bluegrass Stakes at Keeneland. I told you about that in the first hour of the program. You also have the Santa Anita Derby in California, and later in the second hour, you're going to hear from Jeff Chapman, who is the VIP player host at Santa Anita. He'll walk you through all the big races later today at the Great Race Place. And you had the Wood Memorial coming up at Aqueduct later today, and the horse in the spotlight there is Deterministic, who burst onto the scene with a huge win in the Gotham back on March 2nd. He instantly became a buzz horse for the Kentucky Derby. Today, he is the morning line favorite in the Wood Memorial, and he looks to prove that effort and his first win were no fluke. He looks to continue his development, and that would be music to the ears of my next guest, who is Miguel Clement. He works alongside his father, Kristufek, and they are the trainers of Deterministic in today's Wood Memorial. Miguel, appreciate the visit, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Let's start with some of the conversation that's been taking place over the past couple of weeks. There was talk that Deterministic could potentially train up to the Kentucky Derby without another race. There was talk that he could go to a race like the Florida Derby or the Bluegrass. He ends up in the Wood. Tell me about making that decision.
Well, the whole team thought it might be best for him for the Derby. He ran a very good race in the Gotham, and if you believe in numbers, he ran a 7 rag, which is remarkably strong, which leads you to believe that he's going to bounce, or it's imminent that he's going to bounce in his next race if you run him a bit too quick. Nevertheless, if you want a good effort in the Derby, we believe it's wise to have 3 starts under your belts more than 2. The fear about running him back in the Wood is that he's going to bounce off his very high number in the Gotham. So you might lose the battle in that sense, but the main objective would be the Kentucky Derby, so that would put you in the best position to have a chance in the Kentucky Derby.
Do you find that you've given him some time now, so do you find that horses that get time are less likely to bounce or regress from a big effort in their previous race?
So to be completely honest, we looked at all the numbers with Ragusan for comparison's sake, and not many horses run a single digit going a mile along on dirt. So the data sample size for comparison is virtually non-existent. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit like gun territory in that sense. An example would be a horse like Curlin when he won first time out, ran with a ridiculously strong number of figure first time out. And even though he bounced his next start, he still went on to win it. When you get to a certain level of ability, even if they run their B race or they regress a bit, they still might be good enough to win anyway. So that was the line of thinking with the running Deterministic now, because we think a third start might be beneficial for him before the Kentucky Derby.
What impressed you most about his win in the Gotham?
To be completely honest, it's what he did in the afternoon is what he's been demonstrating all winter long with us and all summer long last year. Is very professional, an efficient mover. He could be in front. He could be in last. He can handle kickback. He can handle sloppy track, fast track. It doesn't matter. He's top class.
Now, he's top class. He'll have to prove it again in the Wood Memorial. The Wood Memorial, different scenario, too, because it will be his first try around 2 turns. What have you and your father done to make sure he's prepared for that test?
Well, the whole stable was very excited to see him run 2 turns. We work him in behind, plenty of kickback. He galloped out a little bit more this time just to make sure. Nevertheless, I don't think the 2 turns Mount 8, I don't believe the distance would be an impact towards those results.
You talk about putting him behind horses, getting that kickback. He's shown the ability to rate and relax in his first 2 tries. Do you think that's his best style, to sit just off the pace?
We don't know. He's only run twice, to be completely honest, but he handles everything. You can put him in front, you can put him behind, you can put him upside. He's unfazed. He's top class, so that makes it easier for us. First time out, he broke a bit slow, which was not by design. So he was at the back of the field with Joel at Saratoga, and he had plenty of kickback that day. Everything that went wrong seemed to have gone wrong the moment the gates opened, and he was good enough to overcome it. He circled the field wide and was very impressive to get up in a good maiden that day. And the other day is a bit of a smoother run race where Joel was able to get a position, stalking in the position that he wanted to put himself in, and then Deterministic just took care of the rest.
When did you first know that you had a horse that could really run on your hands with Deterministic?
He always showed himself as a nice prospect, but it wasn't until we started working him that he really caught our eye. Even in his slow, steady works when he first joined us, he caught our eye because he was such an efficient mover. As a result, it was eye-catching just the way he did it. Not so much the times or, who he was working with, but the manner in which he did it, the way he moves. That's eye-catching regarding us.
I know you and Dad would love to win this race later today, but let's say, for example, that you don't win. What do you need to see from him to let you know, okay, this horse is legit for the Kentucky Derby at 1.25 miles?
He needs to run a good race. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, if you believe in numbers, they're all the true people who study numbers greatly. We're all saying that he's going to bounce. So as long as he runs a good race, he's professional, he comes back in good order, he does a solid account of himself, regardless of the results. We would like to see a good effort to give us the confidence to take it to the next stage. We've never had a Kentucky Derby runner, not because we haven't had horses who qualified, but we never thought one had a strong enough chance to be competitive to merit a spot. We might be the minority, but don't believe that to get a horse to run in the Kentucky Derby is the be-all, end-all type of game. I'm sure you recall Toneless was on the Triple Crown Trail, and we had I think it was an infection at the time, so we decided to bypass the Wood and run him in the Peter Pan, and then to win the Belmont. So we skipped the Kentucky Derby by not pressuring him too much to run in the Wood because he wasn't 100% right then. I think a lot of horses go by the wayside when you squeeze them when they're not quite ready for it, both mentally and physically. And as of now, this horse is giving us every indication to go for the first Saturday night.
It's amazing to me when you look at your dad's resume, and for that purpose, your resume too, because you've worked alongside him for so long. You see 2,400-plus wins, almost 2,500 career victories, and all the greatest stakes victories. This would be a first try at the Kentucky Derby, and I guess maybe the program just has never truly been geared toward getting to the Kentucky Derby. Am I wrong in that statement?
No, any big race. We'd like to partake in any big race if we're able to do so, and if the horses are taking us there. I don't think you should always force a path if it's not in their best interest. On the flip side, I think many outfits are labeled by the stock that they received. I think the stable probably received a lot of 1.5-mile turf horses from Europe, 20 years ago. So the stereotype was we could only train, plotters or horses that won, marathon distance events. And then we came in the likes of good turf sprinters like the names of Pure Sensation and Disco Partner. Then we had a reputation of being very good turf sprinter trainers. And then at one point it was just fillies, and then it was colts. And then, I don't know, maybe the dirt reference might take place after Toneless, maybe after Deterministic. As long as you're labeled something, it's always a good sign because it means you're excelling in some aspect of the industry.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And it's just so cool to see you guys standing at the doorstep with this opportunity with a horse as talented as Deterministic. The ownership group, you have several partners involved, and they seem like they're truly enjoying this ride too.
It's a fantastic ownership. We're very grateful. It's thanks to them that we have a horse of this quality. We don't receive many expensive colts that want to go long on dirt from the Keeneland Sales. They were able to do partnerships, and we were able to fortunately receive Deterministic. So we're very, very thankful for this type of firepower. To be honest with you, I think this year we've been a bit more on the Triple Crown Trail than previous years, so it's been exciting. And we just ran third in the UAE Derby. And I think we've already won 4 or 5 stakes this year for 3-year-olds on dirt going long. It's fun. It's a new aspect for the stable because we were receiving a bit better bloodstock, if you want to be honest.
Do you, Miguel, even let your mind go to a moment on the first Saturday in May when Deterministic, let's just say he would cross the finish line first in the Kentucky Derby? Do you let your mind go there, or do you have to stay in the moment now?
Never. You always worry about just his well-being, his mental and his soundness, and everything else will just pan out the way it's supposed to be.
It's
our job to worry about everything else, and then they take care of the rest.
Yeah, one step at a time. It's worked very well for Miguel and for his father, Kristufek. Miguel, listen, I really appreciate a few minutes here. I know you've got a lot of things to get to, but I appreciate the conversation. All the best with Deterministic, not just in the Wood Memorial, but going forward and with all the horses that you and Dad are associated with here. Best of luck moving forward throughout 2024.
Thank you very much. Hopefully we get lucky later today, and thanks for everything.
Good luck. Miguel Clement here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. Yeah, good horse. And you heard him mention the number on the rag sheet. Now, listen, if he gets to the Kentucky Derby, let's say he said he needs to see a good race today. Obviously, he needs to run well. He's got 50 Derby points. That's probably enough right now to get him in if he would finish off the board. But as Miguel was, when I asked him that question about, it's interesting that with almost 2,500 career victories and all the greatest stakes that he and his dad have participated in, they've never run a horse in the Kentucky Derby. And he said, well, you want the horse to take you there. And that's what Deterministic has to do. When he answered that question, he said, we need to see a good race from him. If he finishes 5th or 6th or doesn't run his race in the Wood Memorial, they're not going. That's what I read, reading between the lines. Even if he would get in with 50 points, they want the horse to take them there. And that's what all good training operations will do. It's about the horse first and the horse bringing you there, not you forcing the horse into a certain spot. And Deterministic has all kinds of ability. Can he overcome the lightly raced portion of his resume, not having a lot of experience? He's certainly run like an experienced horse in his first 2 starts. Can he do it going 2 turns? That's the question. If he does, they're on their way to Louisville. It would be really cool to see. All the best to Miguel and his dad, Kristufek, in today's Wood Memorial. All right, coming up next, it is time for this week's edition of Kentucky Bred. And this is going to be every week's a cool segment, but I'm really excited for this. I get a chance to welcome Robert Clay of Grandview Equine to the program. Robert, of course, the founder of 3 Chimneys Farm as well, which he then sold and then started Grandview Equine. They bred last year's Derby winner Mage. They are also the breeders of his full brother, Dornoch, who goes in today's Bluegrass Stakes. Should be a really fascinating conversation. Stay with me for that. It comes up next here on the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
Race to TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Juveniles offered by perennial leading consigner Eddie Woods were once again well received at this year's OBS March 2-year-old and training sale, with a colt by Champion Mitoli selling for $725,000, a filly by Twirling Candy selling for $600,000, and a Twirling Candy colt bringing $550,000. Find your next winner at the Eddie Woods consignment at the OBS April sale, April 16th to the 19th. Visit eddywoods.com.
Hey, if your horse struggles with ulcers from time to time, I've got some good news for you. Reline GI by Haggard has a new improved formula, and scientific studies show that it definitely improves gut health. So what's new about Reline GI? It's made with a new beta-glucan that stimulates the immune system to work on targeted areas of a horse's stomach. Plus, there's also a new price that can save you nearly $100 per gallon. Visit ResolveVet.com to learn more about new Reline GI. Better science, better formula, better gut support.
It's time now to shine the spotlight on the Darley Taking the Reins Performer of the Week.
Essential quality, too good. Essential quality has won the Belmont Stakes.
A tremendous look back at champion Essential Quality's win in the 2021 Bluegrass Stakes at Keeneland. One of 5 greatest stakes wins for Essential Quality during his 3-year-old championship season, including victories in the Grade 1 Belmont and Travers. And that makes Essential Quality your Darley Taking the Reins Performer of the Week. Darley Stallion Essential Quality. An Eclipse champion at both 2 and 3, he is the only stallion in the past 25 years to win at 6 furlongs, 8.5 furlongs, 9 furlongs, 10 furlongs, and 12 furlongs, including his win in the Belmont Stakes, the test of the champion. Learn more about Essential Quality and all the Darley Stallions by visiting darleyamerica.com.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
And Two Phils has taken the lead. Two Phils turns for home in front by 2. Mage is coming down the center. Hit Show is there. Kingsbarns gives way. Angel of Empire with powerful strides down the center of the track, but there's 1 furlong to go. Two Phils fights on, but Mage has taken the lead. Angel of Empire's a rallying third. Time is running out to catch Mage. Mage digs down deep, urged onto the wire to win the Derby. Mage the winner. Two Phils was second. Angel of Empire was third, and Disarm came on for 4th.
That's the way things sounded 11 months ago as Kentucky-bred Mage earned the coveted garland of roses beneath the TwinSpires of Churchill Downs. Travis Stone had the call of Derby 149. Over the past several months, you have heard my conversations with owner Ramiro Restrepo, with trainer Gustavo Delgado Jr. and jockey Javier Castellano. But what so often gets overlooked in our game is the fact that the unforgettable moment all Derby-winning connections experience and celebrate on the first Saturday in May starts with the breeder of that particular horse. And in Mage's case, that is Robert Clay's Grandview Equine. And that story gets even better when you consider that Grandview Equine has the opportunity to make it 2 Derby winners in a row as the breeder of Mage's full brother Dornoch in today's Bluegrass Stakes. And with that, it is time now to welcome Robert Clay to the program with this week's edition of Kentucky Bred, which is presented by the Kentucky Thoroughbred Development and Breeders Incentive Funds. And a quick reminder before I do get to Robert, a reminder that awards up to $3,000 a race are available from the Kentucky Breeders Incentive Fund for winning an allowance or maiden special weight race anywhere in the USA or at Woodbine Racetrack, and awards up to $4,000 a race are available for winning a non-graded stakes anywhere in the USA or at Woodbine. And that, trust me, is just the tip of the iceberg. I'm going to tell you about more incentives right after this week's Kentucky Bred conversation with Robert Clay. Robert, good morning. Appreciate the visit.
Good morning. My pleasure.
Congratulations on all of your success with Grandview Equine. Obviously, you were involved with Three Chimneys Farm for a very long time and had a ton of success there, too. We'll talk a little bit about that, but let's start with Mage and the call we just heard from Travis Stone. As you were listening to the call, which I'm sure you've gone back and watched the race a million times, what was going through your mind?
Well, I was actually there, and what was going through my mind when that horses broke, that I really wasn't expecting Mage to win. And so when he sort of fired down the lane and my wife said, "Where is he?" I said, "Here he comes." And to be honest, it was probably as much a surprise to us as it was to many, but it was certainly thrilling.
What is it like to be now on the doorstep of potentially a second run at the Kentucky Derby with a horse that you bred and the full brother of Mage?
Well, it's a bit surreal. I mean, last year's experience was last year's experience, but to have a full brother come along, it's almost unbelievable. As you know, in 150 years, there has not been a full brother or a half brother, for that matter, win the Derby. So maybe for this anniversary, it would be for us. It'd be a great thing, and it makes the Derby all that much more special again.
Well, obviously the pedigree lines are identical. Dornoch and Mage, both sons of Good Magic, who stands at John Sakura's Hillendale Farm. Puka is the dam. She is a daughter of Big Brown. Take me through how all of this this blend, this mating, came to be.
Well, it really started with a coincidence. I was at the Breeders' Cup at Del Mar. My wife wasn't feeling well, and I went back to the hotel, and Barbara walked down and said, as they were putting the 2-year-old group in the gate, "Okay, if I sit here." So I said, "Sure," and then we watched Good Magic, win the juvenile, and I ended up buying 3 shares when he went to stud, and Barbara and I have this thing when she's at the races and I'm at the races, she always seeks me out and asks me to come sit next to her. So we sort of had fun with it, but I bought 3 shares in the horse when he went to stud, and then we wanted to support him, and so went to the sale, and we're lucky enough to buy Puka and bred Puka to one of our shares. So that's how this came about. We really had the shares before we had the mare. We bought the mare sort of purposely to breed to Big Brown, and that's the way the cookie crumbled.
Why do you think it's been such a successful nick, if you will?
Well, Big Brown, obviously a classic winner, capable of producing a classic winner. The mother was very talented. She ran in the distaff. Billy Mott was always, he said that this mare had a lot of ability, and she's a half to a Group 1 winner herself. I mean, I don't think there's any magic to the nick, but I think that the qualities of everything in the pedigree would indicate that she has a possibility of doing this. And of course, she's sort of 3 for 3 in producing stakes winners, and maybe her nicest individual was the one that sold at the yearling sale last year that we've yet to see.
What's really incredible to me is that both horses, Mage and Dornoch, physically are completely different animals. Mage, a bit more of that Good Magic type of build, and then you have Dornoch, who is that big, strapping, Big Brown Puka type of horse. So it's incredible to me that you could have full siblings, I guess just like in people, and they can be completely different physicals, right?
Absolutely. And then the McKenzie that sold in September last year is even a bigger and stronger version of Dornoch. So yeah, they come in all shapes and sizes.
They certainly do. Robert Clay, Grandview Equine, with me here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. Robert, you are Kentucky bred. I mentioned your connection, founding Three Chimneys Farm and all the success you had there, and now the success you're having with Grandview. What's the secret to being successful in thoroughbred racing? You've obviously done it for a long time.
Well, luck stands up first, sort of persistence perhaps second, and I think surrounding yourself with professionals and good people over time. I had a lot of help along the way at Three Chimneys, and I've got a lot of help now. Some of my team came from there, but Puka was picked out by Alex Solis and Jason Litt, and they've been involved with the success of Grandview to a great extent. So I think surrounding yourself with good people and having a lot of luck is what gets you through the thoroughbred game.
What is Robert Clay most proud of with everything you've been able to accomplish in this sport? What are you most proud of?
Oh, that's a question that I don't think about much. I'd have to give some thought to that. I think perhaps the people that I've been able to be associated with, and some that have started at a very young age in our organization and have grown to great heights. I think of Gary Bush, who started with us when he was in high school, and now runs Denali as a manager. Lots and lots of those kinds of examples. Braxton Lynch, a lot of that, and this is a people game, and the excitement, the thrill of the race is goes back to all the people that you're associated with, including your clients, your customers. Horses have a way of wealth transfers in the world, and it can be in Saudi Arabia, it can be in Japan, it can be wherever it happens to be. And wealth comes to buy horses, and so it's an exciting sort of a life's work to walk with those people that have been successful in other businesses and do business with them and try to bring the best part of the sport to them.
What initially led you to develop Three Chimneys Farm?
Well, I did my business school thesis on the economics of the thoroughbred business, although I knew nothing about it. But I was from Kentucky, and I thought it'd be a good thing to write about. So, back as an undergraduate, I did research at the Blood Horse and the Florida Horse, and wrote probably what was a very mediocre paper. But I caught the bug and moved back to go to business school here at UK, and got drafted and had a few months before I had to go in, and so I rode with Harry Schmidt at Spendthrift and Joe Taylor at Gainesway and Jim Smith the vet, and then I got a job as assistant foaling guy out at Spendthrift. Got the bug again, then went 3 years to the service and came back and worked in a fertilizer business, sold fertilizer to these horse farms, and bought 100 acres and put 10 stalls in a tobacco barn and started boarding horses, and then 13 years later sold my fertilizer business and syndicated Slew of Gold. So that was and got lucky enough the second year to get Seattle Slew and Chief's Crown, and that's sort of the beginnings.
No, it's been a wonderful ride for you and for your family and for the entire team and all the people that you've touched over the years, Robert, as you just walked through some of those individuals. Some really exciting news coming out yesterday from John Stewart, who tweeted about Puka having another foal on the ground, and that foal is a son of Good Magic, which would make that youngster a full brother to both Dornoch and to Mage. So there is a third one in the pipeline, Robert, and Puka was sold to John last year at the Keeneland November sale for $2.9 million from the Case Clay Thoroughbred Management consignment, and he is now reaping the rewards with this youngster on the ground, and we want to wish him all the best. But that is really exciting news.
Really cool. I'm thrilled for him. The mare's ended up in great hands, and to have a healthy colt come along is, hopefully is a big payoff.
Yep, wonderful stuff, and we'll see how that plays out looking to the future. Robert, I mentioned that this segment presented by our friends at the Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund and the Breeders' Incentive Funds, and so much of what we talk about here is often on the racing side, but on the breeding side, the things that have been done with the Kentucky industry in recent months and recent years have really benefited everybody, even the breeders, haven't it?
Absolutely. I mean, Kentucky is the one state really that has it right. Everybody else is trying to catch up to us, and so they put these incentives in their states for breeding programs. But our program is unique and has been from the beginning in that it's open racing, and it pays those that have been bred in Kentucky, but the competition is not restricted to Kentucky breds, and that's the difference, and that's why racing here is so strong, because we're not cheapening our product by restricting the quality of the horses in the fields, and we've become somewhat unique in that way, but we stayed true to that sort of principle, and I think it's paying off, and it's due to the really foresight and hard work of a lot of people way back when the program was founded.
Well, Robert, I want to wish you all the best in the Bluegrass Stakes with Dornoch, and all the best going forward with all the horses that you're going to be involved with Grandview. Keep up the wonderful work, and I really appreciate a few minutes here this morning.
My pleasure. Enjoyed talking to you.
All right, Robert Clay here on this week's edition of Kentucky Bred. Join me next Saturday here on the Equine Forum for another edition of this segment presented by the Kentucky Thoroughbred Development and Breeders' Incentive Funds, providing awards up to $5,000 and $7,500 for winning a Grade 1, Grade 2, or Grade 3 race anywhere in the USA and in multiple countries, and awards of $200,000 allocated to the top 20 claiming horses in Kentucky with the most claiming wins in the Bluegrass State. Breed them, raise them, race them. We all win with Kentucky Breds. A wonderful conversation there with Robert Clay, and somebody who has had a significant impact on our game for many, many years. And it's so great to see him having the kind of success he's having now with Grandview. And, boy, think about that. Just to have a horse compete in the Kentucky Derby as a breeder one time is really special. But he's sitting here with an opportunity through his Grandview Equine to now be looking at back-to-back starters in the Derby, maybe back-to-back Derby winners. This is a game built on hopes and dreams, and it doesn't matter if you're Robert Clay or somebody that's just getting started in the game. The dream is kind of the same for everybody, and the Derby is at the top of the list for many people when they start dreaming, and what a ride this has been, what a ride it could continue to be for Robert Clay, and my thanks to him for being with me here this morning. When I come back, going to turn our attention westward to Santa Anita. Jeff Chapman is the VIP player host at Santa Anita. He's going to walk you through the Santa Anita Derby, the Santa Anita Oaks, and all the big races taking place in Southern California later today. This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN. Horse racing's voice.
Race the TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Fans, we really do have a great weekend of live racing lined up at Santa Anita Park. Today, of course, is the big day as we present the 87th running of the Santa Anita Derby. Among the leading contenders expected for this year's Santa Anita Derby are Mayman and Imagination for trainer Bob Baffert and Stronghold for trainer Phil D'Amato. A tremendous day of racing that features 4 other stakes, including the 85th running of the Santa Anita Oaks. A special wager will also be offered today called the Big 3 Pick 3 that consists of the Wood Memorial, the Bluegrass Stakes, and the Santa Anita Derby. A tremendous day of racing also includes Santa Anita's Derby Day 5K, a spring carnival in the the infield, and a Santa Anita Derby Beer Festival. First post time today is 12 noon. The Easter egg hunt will now take place tomorrow, Sunday, April 7th, in addition to Fiesta de Santa Anita in the infield. For more information, go to santanita.com. The top jockeys, the top trainers, and world-class racing are all here at the great race place, Santa Anita Park.
There are thrills around every turn at Gulfstream Park during the Royal Palm Meet with live horse racing action Thursday through Sunday and simulcast opportunities 7 days a week. Come out and enjoy weekend stakes races, including the Royal Palm Juvenile on the road to Royal Ascot. Take in the action from the Carousel Club or feast in Ten Palms Restaurant with an elevated view of the track. For stake schedules, tickets, and more, head to GulfstreamPark.com.
They're off in the Kentucky Derby. His sire is one of the most exciting young stallions in the world. His dam is the leading candidate to be named Broodmare of the Year. And before he ran in the Kentucky Derby, only the great Justify had ever won the sport's greatest race after just 3 lifetime starts.
And it is going to be Mage to win the Kentucky Derby.
A genetic masterpiece. Historic ability. Mage, now standing at Airdrie Stud.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
And Creative Cause, the grey at the rail, has perfect running room. He's got to get to this big long shot, blue skies and rainbows. But Creative Cause has dead aim. What's coming out on him now? I'll have another coming home, gamely down the centre. I'll have another Creative Cause on the inside, blue skies and rainbows, a three-way thriller. I'll have another Creative Cause. I'll have another's in front. Creative Cause, they hit it together. I'll have another. And Mario Gutierrez have won the Santa Anita Derby. Creative Cause and nose back second. Huge run from Blue Skies and Rainbows in third, and then came Painter.
Welcome back to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires. Trevor Denman with the call of the 2012 running of the Santa Anita Derby, won by I'll Have Another. For trainer Doug O'Neill, Doug would come back the following year and win it again, and if he's going to win it this year, he has his work cut out for him. He has EJ Won the Cup, who is 15-1 on the morning line in this afternoon's Santa Anita Derby. But he has to tackle the Bob Baffert runners, and Bob Baffert is always difficult to deny when it comes to any race on the West Coast, but certainly the Santa Anita Derby, where he's won it more than any other trainer. We'll see if Doug can pull a rabbit out of a hat and get back to the Kentucky Derby again this year. The Santa Anita Derby coming up as race number 10 on the program, 7:45 Eastern, 4:45 local time on the West Coast. And nobody knows that better than Jeff Chapman, who is the VIP player host at Santa Anita, and he is with me now here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. Jeff, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. And I think Doug would be doing backflips all the way down to the finish line if he just hit the board in this race. So I don't think any chance of winning. He would be happy to get a second or third in this Santa Anita Derby upcoming.
I would agree. And, you know, it's not taking anything away from Doug, but he is up against it here, especially when you look at Imagination for Bob Baffert and Frankie Dettori, who is the 8-5 morning line favorite. But Bob also has Winstock, and we know the success that he has had. But then there's Stronghold from the barn of Phil D'Amato. This is a race that if you're going to win it, you better have your running shoes on.
No question about it. And, you know, I think the Baffert Imagination especially is going to take quite a bit of the money. I can see this horse going off at like 3-5, something like that. I think the public's going to be all over this horse. You know, I was actually hoping May Moon would end up here, and May Moon ended up not entered in the Santa Anita Derby, which is a little bit interesting. But I think this race is a little bit more difficult than just singling Imagination.
Outside of Imagination, then, who else do you have your eye on?
So, you know, I'm big into watching all the replays, and I watch a lot of the works on XBTV. And when I watch works, anything else, it's like when you look at something, a time on the page means nothing to me. It's just how they do it. And the horse who looks like this, he's really coming into this race sitting on go, is Stronghold for Phil D'Amato. If you go back to that March 25th work, which was 58-2, once again, like I said, the time means nothing. It's just how they do it. It could have been 102 and change. But this horse had just a stranglehold on and ran by a couple runners late. Now, they were older turf horses, but they're graded stakes horses. But it's just how he did it. And it could almost been a breezing, which they never give out here. And this horse is working terrific, and I think he's going to give Imagination everything he can handle here in the Santa Anita Derby.
Really interesting. I remember talking with Phil D'Amato prior to that last victory in the Sunland Derby, and he was high on this horse, but he also said he needed to continue to develop and improve and prove that he belonged at this level, and he certainly did that day.
Yeah, he did, and I think he's actually moved up quite a bit since then. Like we said, this is second time as a 3-year-old, and his last couple works have been really strong. Obviously, Imagination, and don't get me wrong, Imagination's last work was absolutely terrific as well. I think it's a 2-horse race, 3-4 all day long. I think the rest of them are just running for third.
Yeah, we're going to see how this plays out. Again, post time for the Santa Anita Derby, 7:45 Eastern, 4:45 local time on the West Coast. $750,000 on the line in there, and of course a spot in the Derby starting gate. If you can find a way to finish in the top 2 or maybe even the top 3 might even get you in. But we'll see if Jeff is correct and maybe a bit of an upset there of Imagination. How about the Santa Anita Oaks? That's another one that I think sometimes at this time of year, Jeff, I think the girls tend to get overlooked because of all the Derby hype. But tell me about this year's Santa Anita Oaks.
So, when you originally look at it on paper, once again, everybody's going to just focus on Kinza. She's 4 to 5 in the morning line. She's 3 for 3. She won the Santa Isabel by 5 in an absolute jog. I think this race gets a little bit more interesting for a couple of reasons. One thing, if you go 2 back, Copion and Kinza were basically co-favorites at about even money. And, Kinza went wire to wire. She won fairly easily by a measured 2 lengths. Couple things stand out here. Copion has had a little bit more rest coming back, has worked very well. The thing that really interests me is the Bafferts always seem to run how they work coming up to the race. Once again, I allude back to XBTV on March 29th. Believe it or not, Nothing Like You, the one, and Kinza worked together. And in my opinion, Nothing Like You got the best of Kinza in that work. And so I'm not sure if Kinza's quite as sharp, and she's going to be a very low price. The other thing coming into this is we all know the 1 and the 2 are both the Bafferts. So it's kind of the cat and mouse game here with the pace, right? Bob's not going to send both of those. Drawing the rail on the inside, I don't know what Frankie Dettori is going to do here, because it looks like Kinza just goes to the lead. So I got to figure Kinza's going to send and Nothing Like You takes back. So what does Copion do then? Copion can obviously go with or maybe sit just off. So I'm not sure how that pace is going to develop here, and that's the cat and mouse in it. But I think Copion is a very interesting horse, once again, going against a very, very short Baffert horse. And I probably sound like a complete idiot. I'm trying to beat 2 Bafferts in 2 races that are probably going to be 2 to 5 and 3 to 5. But I do think it's more interesting than it looks on paper.
You talk about Nothing Like You, in your opinion, getting the better of Kinza in that work. Do you see a scenario where Nothing Like You could be the upsetter here?
Could be. If I play some sort of exotics, I will probably go 3 deep just because of that. I haven't been too impressed by Nothing Like You in the races. I didn't even, I was there for the Starlet back at Los Al, and I didn't think that that horse had any chance, and it drew off a 1/5. Now, we know Los Al's a different type of track, so I kind of threw that out. Then she did no running in the Las Virgenes, so I thought, this horse doesn't belong here. This last work really perked up, and we've seen a million times where a higher-priced Baffert ends up winning a race, and everybody's shaking their head thinking, wow, I like the other one, and the bigger price ended up winning. So kind of an outside chance, but based on that work, I just wouldn't overlook a horse who's going to be probably 8-1 on the morning line in a small field.
Yeah, because of the 5-horse field, the Santa Anita Oaks will go as race number 6. It is 5:32 Eastern, 2:32 on the West Coast. I want to ask you about one more graded stake, and then I want to talk to you about a special wager that is taking place on this Saturday afternoon. But the other graded stakes on the program is the Monrovia, which is going to be run just before the Santa Anita Derby as race number 9, 6.5 furlongs on that hillside turf course, which is always so much fun. I love sitting in the grandstand at Santa Anita watching horses run at the base of the San Gabriel Mountains, and this is one of the cool racetracks that we have, one of the cool layouts that we have in thoroughbred racing with this downhill turf course. How'd you see the Grade 3 Monrovia?
Yeah, it's funny. I work at Santa Anita, obviously, and I get to see that every day, and there's nothing better. It never gets old watching a race down the hill. Those are my favorite races, and they're terrific to handicap as well. And obviously, I think one of the big points here is horses usually love the hill or they don't love the hill. And ones who run well on it tend to come back and run well on it over and over again. So I've kind of narrowed it down to 3 horses here, and that would be the 1 Graceland Gray, the 6 Ag Bullet, and the 8 Get the Money. Now, Ag Bullet ran last time off of a long layoff and won nicely. She's undefeated on the turf. She's 2 for 2, 3 for 3, and won down the hill last time. The interesting part of that race, if you watch that replay, is Graceland Gray is more of a need the lead type of horse and kind of got stuck behind horses, didn't have the best of trips, and kind of crossing the dirt was in a tight position, and I think came on late again against Ag Bullet. This horse obviously cutting back, but is a need the lead type of horse. This horse can get the lead going a mile, but this horse can take the lead going 6.5 down the hill. There's not a ton of speed. I don't love the rail down the downhill turf course, but in a smaller field, I think Juan Hernandez is going to be on the engine early, and I think this horse has a chance to go wire to wire here. I think he's going to send, and I think Graceland Gray can get brave when on the lead, and I think this horse is probably the horse to beat. Ag Bullet, like I said, ran so well off the bench last time for Richard Baltus. You got to use that horse. And then another horse to watch is the 8 Get the Money. Drawn outside, if you go back and watch that race on March 3rd down the hill, this horse had all kinds of trouble and was steadied 2, 3, 4 times, kept having to find another gear, and still ended up winning down on the rail. And Frankie Dettori, of all jockeys, is dominant down the hill. This guy, A, is very aggressive, and B, he knows how to ride that hill as well as anyone I've ever seen. So I wouldn't toss Get the Money at a nice 6-1 out of this Monrovia.
The best part about the Monrovia is you don't have to worry about playing against a Bob Baffert horse because he doesn't have one in there.
Absolutely, right? Yeah. But I do think it's, out of the 8 horses, I think this is a very interesting race. And I think, once again, pace is going to make a big difference in this race. And I think, once again, Graceland Gray could steal this thing on the front end and maybe get overlooked. I think Ag Bullet's going to get bet off the board and probably be 4-5.
Great information from Jeff Chapman, who is the VIP player host at Santa Anita. He is with me right now on the Horse Racing Radio Network. Jeff, let's turn our attention to a special wager that is taking place later today. It is the Big 3 Pick 3, which is going to feature the Wood Memorial, Bluegrass, and Santa Anita Derby. That's going to be a lot of fun, too.
Yeah, it should be. What a great idea, right? Because the 3 Derby races, and they created a bet out of this. And the nice thing about it is it's a $3 minimum bet, and you can wager on all 3 races that have Derby implications. And, these wagers tend to pay a lot. And as you and I have talked about, all it takes is beating maybe you beat the Baffert in the last leg of the Derby at a short price, and we could see a giant payoff in a bet that thank God that the folks are getting creative and working together here and offering different bets that people could get excited about, especially on a big day that includes all three tracks, all three Derby implications. And I love the idea. I think it works out very well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a fantastic idea, and it is nice to see all the tracks kind of coming together to put something like this in the spotlight for bettors, to give them this opportunity to play a wager like this. The Big Three, Pick Three, featuring the Wood Memorial, Bluegrass, and Santa Anita Derby. Jeff, as the VIP player host, I imagine today is going to be an extremely busy day for you. What's your afternoon look like?
Extremely busy, but a lot of fun, of course. You know, we've got obviously all the big players on track. We've got the Derby Day 5K this morning, tons of people. We also get quite a few celebrities out. I happen to be able to take care of quite a few of them. I don't know any names yet, so I wouldn't keep it under wraps if I knew somebody was coming out. But it's always fun to see some of the celebs come out and enjoy a day at the races. It looks like sunny skies. It's going to be a terrific day, and I can't wait.
Awesome. We'll enjoy every minute of it, my friend. Really appreciate the insight here this morning. And good luck with if you get a chance to dabble in making a wager or two, good luck.
Absolutely. I appreciate the time and looking forward to a great day of racing.
All right, Jeff Chapman here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. Yeah, I do love that wager where you can play all three of the Derby preps taking place later today, play them together. It's a really neat concept, and, of course, take advantage of that opportunity. And listen, Jeff just laid out a scenario where maybe you could beat Bob Baffert in the Santa Anita Derby, which is never easy to do. And then I'm not sold that the Wood Memorial and the Bluegrass Stakes don't result in a solid price in each of those races. So if you're fortunate enough to get the right combination there with those three, as Jeff pointed out, they tend to pay pretty well. Maybe you get lucky and make a nice score with that wager. So make sure you check that out. All right, when I come back, it is time to get you ready for hour number 3, and I'll take a look at some historical dates in racing history as they apply to this weekend in thoroughbred racing. This is the Equine Forum on the Horse Racing Radio Network.
Keeneland Sales proudly presents Spectacular Bid Week on HRRN.
When the spring meet ends, summer success begins. Buy, sell, fresh winners, hot prospects. One night, one chance. Finish strong. Don't miss out. The Keeneland April Selected Horses of Racing Age Sale. Friday, April 26th.
Retirement can be scary, but only if you're not prepared. That's why AARP created thisispretirement.org. Because unless you've already retired, you're in pretirement, and you still have time to plan. Learn about retirement savings options, potential tax breaks, and how you can build savings over time. Visit thisispretirement.org for free resources to help you customize your action plan and feel the retirement fear disappear. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
James Brown and Bill Cowher welcoming you back to Dennis Melvin's house. It's time for the Midnight Snack Run.
This is one tricky obstacle course. Sticking to healthy habits in this kitchen is going to take focus and determination, but it can be done, JB.
He's already entered the snack part of the course, and he's eyeballing a jar of chocolatey candy.
That is tempting right off the start.
Uh-oh, he's reaching, Bill, but he pushes it away.
Great stiff arm.
He's approaching a plate of delicious-looking iced cookies.
Oh, Dennis, you only want one of those.
He blows right by him for the apple.
Oh, the fridge. It's make or break time, JB.
He stares down some rich-looking treats. Uh-oh, looks like he's headed for the soda. Wait, he jukes left, grabs the water bottle, and shuts the door with his elbow in record time.
Unbelievable move. I gotta see that again.
And he's out. He even turned off the light.
That's the way you execute a midnight snack run.
Stand Up to Cancer and Rally want you to reduce your risk for cancer.
Go to takeahealthystand.org.
Hey, Jude Feld here. I'm back to get you ready for the 150th Kentucky Derby with HRRN's Derby Countdown, presented by Hillendale at Lapa. I'll join Bobby Newman live at Churchill Downs Tuesday through Thursday mornings of Derby Week as we bring you interviews from trackside with jockeys, trainers, owners, and other racing insiders, plus workout reports, breaking news, handicapping advice, and more. It's the Derby Countdown presented by Hillendale of Lapa, Tuesday through Thursday of Derby Week, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Listen on Sirius 161, XM 206, or streaming live at horseracingradio.net.
You're listening to HRRN, Horse Racing's Voice. Keeneland Sales proudly presents Spectacular Bid Week on HRRN.
Spectacular Bid going away by 4 lengths. Lot of Gold second, Rivalero third, Bishop's Choice fourth. Through the stretch, Spectacular Bid opening up the lead and going away by 6.
Spectacular Bid going away to lead by 3. Spectacular Bid in front. Bill Shoemaker aboard. Spectacular Bid wins the Malibu Stakes by 4.
Spectacular Bid wins it by a length and a half with Glorious Song second, Nicole Virginian third. Spectacular Bid under Willie Shoemaker winning this 14th running of the Avery L. Haskell Handicap in 1 minute, 48 seconds flat.
Now through the stretch, it's Spectacular Bid opening up the lead and drawing away by 3. Lot of Gold second, Fantasy Reality third. As they move down under the wire, Spectacular Bid goes away by 5.
It is Spectacular Bid. Franklin waxing with a whip, and he draws out to lead it by 4. Lot of Gold is going to be second, and that's the way this race is going to end. It is Spectacular Bid coming to the line with his ears pricking, and as he hits the wire, he is 5 lengths the winner.
But there's a 16th of a mile to go, and Spectacular Bid is going to win the 106th running of the Kentucky Derby.
The legendary Spectacular Bid. We continue to celebrate him on this day, this Saturday morning, April 6th, 2024. It never gets old listening to those calls of Spectacular Bid. He was so good. 26 wins from 30 starts, more than $2.7 million in earnings in his career. Those numbers by today's standards would have been much, much higher considering all the big races that he won. He, of course, is a Keeneland Sales graduate, and all week long you've been listening to Spectacular Bid Week here on the Horse Racing Radio Network, the first of 3 races that you're going to hear, 3 horse weeks that you're going to hear, presented by Keeneland Sales, at least through the first half of the year. We'll have more leading up to the Breeders' Cup as well, but we want to thank Keeneland Sales for partnering with us to create this Horse Week series, honoring some of the great Keeneland Sales graduates of all time, and that is certainly the case with Spectacular Bid, and I hope you have enjoyed Spectacular Bid Week here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. And as I mentioned, one of the great horses of all time, it leads me into some dates in racing history as they apply to this weekend in thoroughbred racing. And let's start with today, April 6th, 1954. That's the day that 2 future champions, Bold Ruler and Round Table, were foaled at Claiborne in Paris, Kentucky. Happy birthday to those 2. April 7th, tomorrow, the anniversary of the great Secretariat in just his second start as a 3-year-old. He won the Gotham Stakes, April 7th, 1973. That race at Aqueduct. He was the 1-2 favorite that day, 1-10 favorite that day, even better. His time of 1:33 2/5 for the mile equaled the track record for that distance. It was April 7th, 1979 that jockey Steve Cawthon made his first race in England a winning one. He rode Marquis Universal, Irish bred, at Salisbury to victory that day. And one more for you. April 8th, 1971. That would be Monday, the anniversary of New York City off-track betting opening for business. 2 branches were available to accept wagers, the Grand Central Terminal in Manhattan and an outlet in Queens. Total handle, including telephone betting, was $66,091. And today, by the way, tomorrow, April 6th, today, let's keep these dates straight in my head. Today, a very happy birthday to my wonderful friend, Sally Ellen Hurst at Country Life Farm in Maryland. This is the day she entered the world. That is a historical date in racing history, no doubt about it, and so glad she did. Such a great person. Happy birthday, Sally Ellen. And those are historical dates in racing history as they apply to this weekend and the days surrounding it, even though I can't keep my days straight. First 2 hours of the show, getting ready to wrap this up and get ready for hour 3, which begins with Joe Kristufek and the TwinSpires Triple Play. Going to talk more about Spectacular Bid, too, with Kurt Becker and his Stroll Through Racing History. Kurt You heard him in the first hour of the program talking about bid, and then he talked about the big day at Keeneland today, of course. But he put together a beautiful feature in this week's Stroll Through Racing History on Spectacular Bid that you won't want to miss. That comes up at 10:20 Eastern. And at 10:30, Dale Romans, Tim Wilkin, both going to be with me for this week's edition of I Ask, They Answer. And we'll have plenty to talk about there, including the situation now surrounding Churchill Downs and owner Amir Zidane, not really involving Bob Baffert directly, but Amir Zidane has filed for an injunction to be able to run his Arkansas Derby winner Muth in the Kentucky Derby. And if that were the case, Muth would then be trained by Bob Baffert if the court finds in his favor. So there is still a chance that we could see the Arkansas Derby winner in the Kentucky Derby, and we could potentially see Bob Baffert in this year's Kentucky Derby as well. I'll ask Dale and Tim their thoughts. What are the odds that Amir Zidane actually gets the ruling to go in his favor? That's one thing we'll talk about. We have a listener question submitted to Dale and Tim, a handicapping question that should be fun. And I'll ask them too, is it time for racing to embrace a central replay center to help with stewards' decisions? See it in other sports. Maybe racing can do that too. All of that coming up in hour number 3. Stay with me here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. If your local station is leaving us at this time, continue listening to the third hour of the program on Sirius XM satellite radio and streaming worldwide at horseracingradio.net. Hour 3 of the Equine Forum is coming up next, right after this 10-second pause for station identification. This is the Horse Racing Radio Network, where racing comes to talk.
This is HRRN, horse racing's voice.
And Fusa Ichi Pegasus runs by the front runners, and he's pulling away, and he is pulling away impressively. Red Bullet left behind, Country only third, Aptitude fourth. Fusa Ichi Pegasus will roll into Kentucky as the favorite in the Derby.
Fly so free and strike the gold in the center of the track. It's Strike the Gold moving by and getting the lead from Fly So Free. Strike the Gold in the center of the track is drawing away. Fly So Free is second. Then on the inside, that's No Work All Play, but it's Strike the Gold. He's going to win the Bluegrass. Strike the Gold drawing out.
Welcome to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires.
And California Chrome is absolutely sensational. California Chrome will be carrying the hopes of California all the way to the Kentucky Derby. He waltzed home under Victor Espinoza.
And it's Spectacular Bid taking the lead by a length and a half. Along the inside, General Assembly in second. Flying Pastry drops back on the outside. Golden F coming on. But there's a 16th of a mile to go. And Spectacular Bid is going to win the 105th running of the Kentucky Derby.
Now, here's Mike Penna.
Welcome back. Hour number 3 of the Equine Forum, rolling into the final furlong. Plenty of content still to come on a very busy Saturday morning for the sport of thoroughbred racing. If you missed any portion of the first 2 hours of the program, head back to our website to check out the podcast, and do that on every podcast platform. Hour 3 kicks off with the TwinSpires Triple Play. Kurt Becker, Stroll Through Racing History, remembering the great Spectacular Bid. And I Ask, They Answer with Dale Romans and Tim Wilkin coming up at 10:30. But without further ado, time now to say hello to my good friend, Joe Kristufek. Joe, you're back from the fairgrounds, ready to roll for Keeneland, Churchill, all the fun stuff coming up here this spring as we dive into the final furlong on the road to the Kentucky Derby. Should be a lot of fun, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And the end of the fairgrounds meet was spectacular, Louisiana Derby Day, and then that marathon 15-day or 15-race card, I should say, on closing day. And then, took a little bit of time to regroup, drove back to Louisville the following Saturday, and, gearing up for Kentucky Derby 150, which is going to be special. Went to the track earlier this week and got to see the renovations and the new paddock, which is going to be sensational. It's going to be interesting to see, operationally what it's like once we get some horses in there, et cetera, et cetera. But super excited every year for Kentucky Derby season, but maybe just a tinge more this year with it being such a special year.
Will the new paddock area be fully complete by the time we get to the first Saturday in May?
Well, when we walk in there and we look at it, we say, how are they going to make it in time? And then magically they do. It'll be ready. It'll be ready for opening night, which is the Saturday before Kentucky Derby. We race at night on that first card, and we're also going to draw the Kentucky Derby and the Oaks. I believe it's between races 3 and 4 on that card. So something we're doing a little bit different this year is drawing the Derby and the Oaks races on opening night during the actual racing program. So that'll be exciting, and the draw is going to be held in the paddock, so it better be ready.
Yeah, it better be ready to go. I'm sure it will for Derby 150 and for opening night. Going to be spectacular, and we continue to edge closer to that point with the Wood Memorial, with the Santa Anita Derby, with the Bluegrass Stakes. And, Joe, you have selected 3 races for our listeners, and I have a feeling you're going to be dialed in today because now you're back, you're getting ready, you're watching Kentucky racing again. This just feels right to me. So let's try to go 3 for 3, and we're going to kick it off with the 6th race at Keeneland, which is the Commonwealth Stakes, and that's a Grade 3, 7 furlongs on the main track. How'd you see the Commonwealth?
Well, we're going to try to go 3 for 3, Mike. It is baseball season, so I'm going to try to hit a double here in race 6, a single in the next Keeneland race, and then I'm going to throw you a curveball with my third pick of the day, which we'll get to here in a little bit. The Commonwealth, nice race. I'm familiar with a lot of horses in here. Minnesota Ready, surprisingly, was made the morning line favorite off of that off-the-turf victory in the Colonel Power and the slop last out going 5.5 furlongs. He's a nice horse. I don't know if he'll be the morning line favorite. I would, take a little bit of a stand against him if he's bet down in this race. He's got a chance, but as one of the betting choices, I'm kind of sort of a little bit against him. Bo Cruz at 12-1 is very interesting to me on the cutback off a needed race for Al Stahl. He's 12-1 in the morning line, but I think the horse to beat here is the number 2 Wicco for Wesley Ward, who did win at Keeneland in dominant fashion, albeit in other than back last October. And I was kind of sort of against him in that 1-turn mile race in late November at Churchill when he was bet down to 2-1 favoritism. In a 1-turn mile race, Mike, they went 22-2, 44-3, and this horse was 4 wide early and was pressing the pace, made the lead, and then was simply run down late by a cutback horse and a classy one at that in Dennington. Only got beat a length. Then he's laid up. He runs back at Turfway, where Wesley Ward does run a lot of horses, goes off as the odds-on favorite and runs third. And that kind of sort of darkens his form a little bit. He just looks like a horse to me that is just better on the dirt. He's proven at Keeneland. He's got speed. He's got a race under his belt. He's 4-1 in the morning line. But, again, he might get bet down a little bit from there. I don't think he's going to be like an overwhelming favorite or anything. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go off as one of the top couple of favorites in the race. But I still think he's worth a play here. Wesley Ward, Irad Ortiz, probably, deflating our price a little bit more. But I like Wicco for all the reasons I just said.
Yeah, Wesley Ward never wins races at the spring meet in Keeneland, right? Never.
Never.
No, probably worth the stab. You talk about classy horses. What about Manny Wah, who is in this spot? Here's a horse that has all kinds of backlash.
Yeah, Manny Wah's run well at Keeneland, too. He's done some of his best recent work there, and he hasn't really done a lot of good work recently. He hasn't won since 2022. He's only got 5 wins from 44 starts on the resume, but 2 of those coming at Keeneland. And, his recent form just hasn't been great. He had a barn change from Wayne Catalano to William Walden, and it really hasn't made much of a difference for Manny Wah. Now, at a price at Keeneland, I think he might be worth including, but needs to revert back to some of his previous better form.
Anybody else in here that you like with Wicco, or is it strictly him?
Well, Bo Cruz, I mentioned briefly earlier on the cutback for Al Stahl, ran 1:70 last out and got beat a half length by Velociter, who came back and ran a creditable race in the New Orleans Classic in his next start. Behemoth Star, very good Louisiana bred, came back and won a stake on closing day. I think the cutback suits this horse. He's 12-1 in the morning line, and I think he's worth taking a shot with at a price in the multi-race wagers and certainly in any exacta trifecta combinations along with Wicco.
Okay, so Wicco, number 2 at odds of 4-1 in race 6 this afternoon at Keeneland. That is the Commonwealth Stakes. Your second choice comes in race number 10, which is the Grade 1 Toyota Bluegrass, and this one, 1 1/8 for the boys, Derby prep. We know everything that's on the line in here. Dornoch, Sierra Leone, going to get most of the action. Do you like either of those two, or is it somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, I like Sierra Leone, and I guess it's kind of predictable as, somewhat of a homer pick, having seen him win the Risen Star at Fairgrounds off the bench, going 1 1/8 against a very good field, maybe one of the deepest Derby preps we've seen all season, and he had a tough trip. He was pinched back at the start. He began his rally late on the far turn when he was coaxed by jockey Tyler Gaffleone, wound up 6 wide and then had to rally 9 wide off heels at the top of the stretch and still caught Track Phantom. And you see Catching Freedom, he closed well that day, 2 to be third, and he came back to win the Louisiana Derby in his next start. And, Chad Brown's followed this plan. Remsen, Risen Star, Bluegrass, Kentucky Derby. Comes into this race lightly raced, but battle-hardened at the same time. I think that, the other favorite that you mentioned here, Dornoch, is a nice horse, but I don't think he's quite as nice as Sierra Leone. And then the other one would be Just a Touch. We don't really know how good he is. This is his first 2-turn try for Brad Cox off that runner-up performance in the Gotham last out. I think he would be the other one that I'd be interested in as a potential Kentucky Derby prospect. But at 1 1/8 with the longer stretch at Keeneland, Sierra Leone, I think, is one of the most talented horses in this crop. I think he's squarely the horse to beat.
Let me just say this. If we can get another matchup coming down the stretch similar to what we had in the Remsen Stakes with Sierra Leone and Dornoch, where it looked for all the world like Sierra Leone was going to blow right past him, and Dornoch just dug in tenaciously, and the two of them pretty much hit the wire together. Dornoch getting the better of Sierra Leone that day by a nose at the same 1 1/8 distance. If we can get a show like that through the stretch at Keeneland, boy, is everybody going to be in for a treat.
That was a weird race, Mike, because it was this extremely speed-biased inside track that Dornoch took advantage of, but at the same time the pace was really fast, 47-4 to the opening half, which kind of sort of helped Sierra Leone. And like you said, it looked like he was going to run right by. I don't know if it was Dornoch being game, Sierra Leone kind of hanging a little bit because of all the effort he had to make to even get into that position, or a combination of both. But that's going to help our price on Sierra Leone. I don't know that we'll get 2-1, but I certainly don't think we'll get less than maybe 8-5 on Sierra Leone, and I would bet him at even money, so I'll take him.
All right, number 10, Sierra Leone for Joe Kristufek in leg 2 of this week's TwinSpires triple play, 2-1 on the morning line in the Bluegrass Stakes. One more to go to, and it is at Evangeline Downs. You talked about throwing me a curveball. I'm scouring the brisk past performances when you sent me the list here, and I'm like, wait a minute, Evangeline Downs? They're running today? The focus was on other tracks, but here we go. We got race 8 at Evangeline. They are running. This is a 1-mile event, and you have a bit of a price in this race.
Yeah, I wouldn't normally do this to you or the listeners, Mike, but Evangeline's got a really good card on Saturday night, and the Evangeline Mile is one of the featured races on the program. We've got some nice horses entered here, including Double Crown. You've got Capuna for Brett Calhoun. You've got 5-Star General for Grant Forster. This is a horse that won this race last April at Evangeline. These are horses that are very familiar to people that follow, the Kentucky circuit, the Louisiana circuit, the Midwest in general. So it's a good card for you to invest in. And, the horse I like in there is Iron Clover for Brad Cox, who ran 6 furlongs in an optional claiming allowance at Fairgrounds last out. And I will venture to say non-stakes events was the most impressive performance we saw the entire meet. And it was done by Mr. Wireless, a 2-turn, 9-furlong type horse, off the bench going 6 furlongs. He went 108-2 from off the pace and just looked really good doing it. So that's a horse to watch out for moving forward. We'll see if Brett Calhoun decides to keep him sprinting, because if he does, he looks dangerous moving forward with a kind of a newfound career so to speak. But Iron Clover was third in that race, and he did not have a clean trip whatsoever. He was trying to show speed early. He was steadied early on. He was checked. The short comment says that the 7/16 pole still ran unwillingly to the wire after pressing into that fast pace. And now Brad Cox sends him to Evangeline, to the Evangeline Mile. And this horse has two-turn experience. You could see on his past performances, ran third in the Texas Derby, won a little stake at Oaklawn going the short stretch mile. And I don't think you're going to get 8-1 on a Brad Cox horse at Evangeline with Timmy Thornton up. But if you can get somewhat close to half of that, I think it would be worth it. Like I said, I really like this horse, Mike. Otherwise, I wouldn't have thrown you that Uncle Charlie.
I love it, and I'll try to just kind of bounce that up the middle here and see if I can get on
just
base.
Get the bat on the ball, Mike. Go.
That's it. Keep the weight back and see if I can just find a way to get the good part of the bat on the ball with that curveball from Joe Kristufek in the final leg of the TwinSpires Triple Play. Eyeing Clover, number 3, 8-1 on the morning line in the 8th race at Evangeline. So just to recap, Joe, you kick it off with the 6th race at Keeneland, the Commonwealth. You'll take number 2, Wicco, at odds of 4-1. Race 10, the Bluegrass Stakes. You'll go with number 10, Sierra Leone, at 2-1. And then in Evangeline, at Evangeline, in race number 8, you'll take number 3, Eyeing Clover, at 8-1. And by the way, Evangeline running in the evening, so the post time for race 8 is 9:40 Eastern, 8:40 Central, and of course 6:40 for those of you tuning in on the West Coast. Again, you can bet all 3 of those races any way you like. Just make sure you're doing it at TwinSpires. Joe, what's going on at TwinSpires this weekend?
All kinds of great promotions. I got the Road to the Derby, Build Your Bankroll promotion with the Future Wager, the final Future Wager being available this weekend. All kinds of great promotions for the Keeneland meet that you need to check out. Just great promotions all across the board. And just looking forward to, building that bankroll for Kentucky Derby week at Churchill. With the Future Wager as well, you can do that. You've got the Road to the Derby Profit Boost promotion as well. So just go on the website, go on the app, check it out. You've got the bet shares now available on the app. It's one of my favorite things that TwinSpires does. You build yourself a big pick 5 ticket, Mike, and you just can't quite afford it, but you really want to play it. You could share it with friends. It's one of the best options in racing to play some of those bigger tickets that could potentially be life-changing.
Joe, enjoy the day, my friend. Really appreciate you being here, and good luck with the Triple Play, and good luck with all the wagers you're going to make on this Saturday afternoon.
All right, I think the next time I join you, we'll be back at Churchill, so looking forward to it, Mike. Best of luck to all the listeners out there, and enjoy what should be an absolutely phenomenal day of racing.
You got it, my friend. Joe Kristufek, the TwinSpires Triple Play. Again, bet any of those races any way you like. Bet them all, and just bet them at TwinSpires. Coming up next, Kurt Becker takes you on a special stroll through racing history as we continue to celebrate Spectacular Bid Week here on the network. A really fun story about the great Spectacular Bid coming your way next here on the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
Race the TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
There's a corner of Kentucky in Bourbon County, which some refer to as the Promised Land. There's something in the soil and water that make it something special. So special that some of the world's greatest horsemen have staked their claim in the soil just outside of Paris. Iconic names such as Claiborne, Coolmore, Stone, and Darley grace the fence lines which have housed champions for generations. The name Alapa shines as a tribute to the Gilded Age, sharing the stature and grandeur of its neighbors. Born from the wealth, passion, and imagination of Edward Sims, no expense was spared to fulfill his vision. Sims was in the same league as John Madden and Arthur B. Hancock Sr., as a commercial breeder. The torch has been passed. Welcome to Hill and Dale at Alapa.
There are thrills around every turn at Gulfstream Park during the Royal Palm Meet with live horse racing action Thursday through Sunday and simulcast opportunities 7 days a week. Come out and enjoy weekend stakes races, including the Royal Palm Juvenile on the road to Royal Ascot. Take in the action from the Carousel Club or feast in Ten Palms Restaurant with an elevated view of the track. For stake schedules, tickets, and more, head to GulfstreamPark.com. Want to get your career in horse racing off to a fast start? Well, the University of Arizona's Racetrack Industry Program is your winning ticket. The Racetrack Industry Program has served as a springboard to some of the industry's most successful individuals, with a proven track record of job placement right out of college. If you want to earn a degree in the exciting horse racing industry, the Racetrack Industry Program can put you in the winner's circle.
Scholarships are available. Visit rtip.arizona.edu.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Hello, I'm Kurt Becker. Thanks for joining me as I take another stroll through racing history presented by Keeneland. He was a Keeneland Sales graduate, which won 26 races, multiple Eclipse Awards, 2 legs of the Triple Crown, and became both a Horse of the Year and a Hall of Famer. He also won Keeneland's signature race. Today, as Keeneland gets set to present the 100th running of the Bluegrass Stakes, we look back at the horse which won the 55th edition in 1979. His name was Spectacular Bid. Foaled on February 17, 1976 at Buck Pond Farm in Versailles, Kentucky, Spectacular Bid was a steel gray colt by Bold Bidder out of Spectacular by Promised Land. His sire had been a champion at age 4, while his dam had been a track record setter at 6 furlongs in Northern California. In fact, it was his dam and maternal grandsire which were responsible for the colt's gray color. Bred by Madeline Jason and her mother, Grace Gilmore, Spectacular Bid sold as a yearling at Keeneland on September 13, 1977 for $37,000. The buyer was Hawksworth Farm of Harry and Teresa Meyerhoff of Easton, Maryland, and Harry's son Tom of New York, New York. The man who advised them on the purchase was the family's longtime trainer, Grover Buddy Delp. That $37,000 yearling purchase would earn more than 10 times that amount as a juvenile in 1978, on the way to an Eclipse Award as the nation's outstanding 2-year-old male. Spectacular Bid finished the year with 5 consecutive stakes wins, including the Grade 1 Champagne Stakes under jockey George Velasquez and the Grade 1 Laurel Futurity in stakes and track record time for 18-year-old apprentice jockey Ronnie Franklin of suburban Baltimore. The Bid would sustain his momentum as a 3-year-old, winning his first 4 starts of the campaign. Following back-to-back Grade 1 wins in the Florida Derby and Flamingo, Spectacular Bid headed for Kentucky and returned to Keeneland as a champion with a 9-race winning streak. His reputation was so daunting that only 3 horses were entered to run against him in Keeneland's signature event, the Grade 1 Bluegrass Stakes. The date was April 26, 1979. Legendary sportscaster Kaywood Ledford with the call.
And we've got a quarter of a mile left of the Bluegrass Stakes. It is Spectacular Bid that's on the rail with the lead. Lot of Gold is still there in second place, and it is Bishop's Choice fading it even more distant third, and Pianist is out of it. Spectacular Bid is out there by 3, now make it 4 lengths. It is Spectacular Bid. Franklin whacks him with a whip, and he draws out to lead it by 4. Lot of Gold is going to be second, and that's the way this race is going to end. It is Spectacular Bid coming to the line with his ears pricking, and as he hits the wire, he is 5 lengths the winner over Lot of Gold second.
It was his 3rd consecutive Grade 1 victory and his 10th straight win overall. And with that score in the Bluegrass, Spectacular Bid would be headed next to Louisville as the prohibitive favorite for the 105th running of the Kentucky Derby. As Spectacular Bid arrived at Churchill Downs and went through his final paces in preparation for the Run for the Roses, Delp was asked to name the colt's best traits. Delp responded by saying he's intelligent, his manners are really good, he does exactly what you want, and he changes leads like shifting gears. May 5th, 1979, the Kentucky Derby. We pick up the call with Dave Johnson.
And it's Spectacular Bid taking the lead by a length and a half. Along the inside.
outside, General Assembly in second. Flying Pastry drops back on the outside. Golden Neck coming on, but there's a 16th of a mile to go, and Spectacular Bid is going to win the 105th running of the Kentucky Derby. Spectacular Bid doesn't run Franklin Adore.
Sent to the post at odds of 3-5 that day, Spectacular Bid captured the roses and posted his 11th consecutive victory, the longest streak of any Derby winner since 1922. 2 weeks later, the Bid ran his string to 12 in a row with a win in the Preakness at odds of 1-9, the shortest price favorite in the race since Citation in 1948. But there would be no Triple Crown for Spectacular Bid as he finished third behind Coastal in the Belmont at odds of 1-5. Franklin said the horse had struggled to breathe in the stretch. Reports came a day or two later that the Bid had stepped on a safety pin the morning of the race and sustained a puncture wound. Delp, uncharacteristically subdued, said simply that Coastal had been the better horse on that particular day. Spectacular Bid still managed to secure another Eclipse Award, this time as champion 3-year-old male, and he found even more success the following season. As a 4-year-old in 1980, Spectacular Bid won all 9 of his starts, broke track records in 4 graded stakes, broke the world record at 1.25 miles on dirt in 1:57.4, and earned accolades as champion older male horse and horse of the year. He retired with record earnings of $2.7 million, was syndicated for a record $22 million, and just under 2 years later was inducted into Racing's Hall of Fame. As a stallion, Spectacular Bid stood for 11 seasons at Claiborne Farm in Kentucky before being relocated to Milford Farm in Unadilla, New York. He died at the age of 27 on June 9, 2003, having sired nearly 50 career stakes winners and the dams of nearly 70 other black-type winners. Early in Spectacular Bid's 3-year-old season, Andy Beyer of the Washington Post asked Delp how Spectacular Bid compared with Secretariat and Seattle Slew. Delp replied, "This is the greatest horse ever to look through a bridle." At the time, the comment was labeled by many as brash and arrogant. But when Spectacular Bid retired from the races with 26 wins in 30 career starts, one columnist said, maybe Delp wasn't being arrogant, maybe his comment was just a bit premature. We remember Keeneland Sales graduate and Bluegrass Stakes winner Spectacular Bid, and we wish everyone a safe journey later today as Keeneland presents the 100th running of the Bluegrass. Please join me again next week when I take another stroll through racing history presented by Keeneland. For HRRN, I'm Kurt Becker.
And once again, my thanks to Kurt and to Keeneland for making those segments possible each and every week. If you have missed any of Kurt's Stroll Through Racing History segments, all you have to do is head back over to our website, horseracingradio.net. You can check out the special podcast page dedicated to those stories and listen to every single one. There have been some amazing ones. Go back and listen at horseracingradio.net. When I come back, Dale Romans, Tim Wilkin, they will be here. It is this week's edition of I Ask, They Answer. This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
This is HRRN, horse racing's voice.
Race the TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Fans, we really do have a great weekend of live racing lined up at Santa Anita Park. Today, of course, is the big day as we present the 87th running of the Santa Anita Derby. Among the leading contenders expected for this year's Santa Anita Derby are Mayman and Imagination for trainer Bob Baffert and Stronghold for trainer Phil D'Amato. A tremendous day of racing that features 4 other stakes, including the 85th running of the Santa Anita Oaks. A special wager will also be offered today called the Big 3 Pick 3 that consists of the Wood Memorial, the Bluegrass Stakes, and the Santa Anita Derby. A tremendous day of racing also includes Santa Anita's Derby Day 5K, a spring carnival in the infield, and a Santa Anita Derby Beer Festival. First post time today is 12 noon. The Easter egg hunt will now take place tomorrow, Sunday, April 7th, in addition to Fiesta de Santa Anita in the infield. For more information, go to santanita.com. The top jockeys, the top trainers, and world-class racing are all here at the great race place, Santa Anita Park.
Juveniles offered by perennial leading consigner Eddie Woods were once again well received at this year's OBS March 2-year-old and training sale, with a colt by Champion Matoli selling for $725,000, a filly by Twirling Candy selling for $600,000, and a Twirling Candy colt bringing $550,000. Find your next winner at the Eddie Woods consignment at the OBS April sale, April 16th to the 19th. Visit eddywoods.com.
This is I Ask, They Answer on the Equine Forum on HRRN.
Muth and Juan Hernandez have a quarter-mile more to get, and Hernandez gives them the cue to go, and Muth off the turn, still in front. Timberlake second, Jess Steele third, then Mystic Dan, who tries to rally on. Furlong to go, it's Muth. Jess Steele running huge in second, Timberlake third. Muth with a 16th to go, he's opened up by 3, and it's Muth coming down the stretch in Hot Springs to win it. Muth, the son of good magic, wins the Arkansas Derby. Jess Steele second, Mystic Dan third, Timberlake flattens out to fourth.
Muth proved far too much for the competition last Saturday in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Matt Dinnerman had the call. What are the chances the Arkansas Derby winner makes his next start at Churchill Downs on the first Saturday in May? We'll talk about that. Plus, should racing take a page from other major sports and set up a central replay center? And coming off a 13.5 length romp in the Florida Derby, is Fierceness the horse to beat in the Kentucky Derby, or is he the perfect horse to bet against? All of those topics and much, much more are straight ahead on this week's edition of I Ask, They Answer with trainer Dale Romans and turf writer Tim Wilkin, and it is all presented by the University of Louisville Equine Industry Program in the College of Business, and it all starts just 30 seconds from right now.
Learn the business of horses in the world's only accredited equine business program, the University of Louisville Equine Business Program. The University of Louisville has a legacy of excellence educating and developing industry leaders for over 35 years. Classes are taught by industry experts in state-of-the-art facilities located in the heartland of America's equine industry. The University of Louisville Equine Business Program. When it comes to horses, we mean business. For more information, visit business.louisville.edu/equine.
All right, guys, we have plenty to talk about on this show here this morning, as we typically do. But this news coming out this week that the Churchill Downs Bob Baffert saga is going to continue, and it continued this past week when the LA Times reported that owner Amir Zidane had filed a lawsuit against Churchill Downs Incorporated asking for injunctive relief, which would allow Zidane's Arkansas Derby winner Muth to compete in this year's Kentucky Derby with Bob Baffert as his trainer. So I'll ask you, what are the odds the ruling goes in Zidane's favor and this actually happens? Dale, what do you think?
I think it's a coin toss. I don't know. I don't know the facts. I'm not a lawyer, not a judge, but sure seems like they would have some ground to stand on, I think. But it's interesting. And, you know, I wonder if Churchill would even care if they lost or if they would like to go ahead and have one of the best horses in the country run the Derby, because it kind of waters the thing down if you exclude it. So I just was thinking about that before we got on air. If it went through the court system, how hard Churchill's really going to fight it.
You do think it's a 50-50 shot right now, though, huh?
Well, I think so. I think it's, you know, nobody's ever beaten Churchill, but this has got a little different twist to it. It looks like they're picking on somebody. And do they have a monopoly on the Kentucky Derby and racing in Kentucky, and can they use that monopoly to attack someone that they don't like?
Timmy?
You know, we've batted this around so much. I just don't think it will happen. I mean, when you talk about going into the courts, I mean, sometimes these things drag on for years, and we're a month away from the Kentucky Derby. I mean, I think
but Timmy, isn't this a little bit different? Isn't this to get an injunction to stop what can't be fixed while the case is going on?
Again, I'm not a lawyer either.
Emergency injunction.
I mean, maybe. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a legal guy, but it just seems to me that Churchill Downs is not. They're not going to go against Churchill Downs for some reason, and it's just ridiculous because, I mean, if you look at the Bob Baffert's horses that have run in the prep races, okay, in California, there was 174 points available in the 4 races that were out in California, and his horses would have had 135 of those the way the races shook out, which left 39 points for everybody else. And then, of course, Muth winning the Arkansas Derby, he would have 122 points right now, which would be 3rd on the list. And yeah, he's one of the best 3-year-olds in the country right now, and it just makes Churchill look ridiculously stupid that they won't have one of the best horses in the country running in the signature race in America on their 150th anniversary. It behooves me that to no end that this has gone on like this. And yeah, I mean, I'd love to see that injunction happen, but I just don't see it happening.
Let me play devil's advocate and maybe take the side of the courts looking at this. Every owner that has horses with Bob Baffert had the opportunity this year to move those horses to another trainer by a specific date, and they chose not to, knowing full well that they were not going to be able to compete in the Kentucky Derby. Would the court look at that and say, okay, Mr. Zanon, you had your opportunity to move the horse. You chose not to, knowing that this was a possibility. Why now should you be allowed to run your horse in the Kentucky Derby? Do you see that playing out in that fashion?
It could.
Now, yeah, it could, but now, we're not lawyers or judges. But, you know, the way I see it is Bob's suing to get back in, and he's trying to get an injunction to be able to operate while the lawsuit's going on. And you see that a lot of times. And that's why I think it's a coin toss.
Well, Bob doesn't have anything to do with this thing. It's all Zanat.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
he's not
Bob
involved in this.
No, he's not involved with it at all. It's just another ink spot on the game where you have.
Or is it possible the judge says, okay, yes, you're right, you can run your horse, but Bob Baffert can't be the trainer of the horse on Derby Day?
Right. Wonder if Churchill really ever thought that people wouldn't transfer the horses.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because they've done it the last 2 years.
Right. And I bet they never thought people would put Bob ahead of the Derby.
Well, they did.
And they did.
Mm-hmm.
That's why that's why I'm asking the question: do you think they would fight it that hard, or would they be that upset if they lost?
Well, I just don't think they want to have Bob Baffert in this Derby, because then it looks like Bob wins,
and he's liable to win the Derby. But
that's what I mean. But I mean,
if a judge makes them, maybe it's a way of kind of saving face. We didn't give in; the judge made us give in.
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys this question: is Muth the best 3-year-old in training right now?
I don't know about that. I mean, if Nysos was still in training, I would say him. And then after what Todd did in Florida, you'd have to say him.
Fierceness.
But Muth is certainly one of the ones.
Yeah, you could have made an argument for him being the best up until about an hour before the Arkansas Derby, when Fierceness bounced back to his old self.
The Florida Derby, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, who knows what happens today?
Right. And the reason I asked that question is because if he was – we talked about this with Nysos, right? When Nysos was so dominant earlier in the season, we talked about this year's Kentucky Derby winner not getting the respect that they would deserve because a horse like Nysos or now Muth would not be allowed to be in it. Would that Derby winner have an asterisk next to his name, as some people like to say, because he didn't face all the best horses? I don't believe that that's the way it should be, but it's possible that people could look at this year's Derby winner in that fashion if a horse like Muth is not in the field.
It's definitely a watered-down field without one of the best 3-year-olds. I mean, the Kentucky Derby is supposed to be the best 3-year-olds racing in May, and it's obviously if he doesn't get to run, it's not going to be all the best.
Unless you're in Japan, then you get an automatic bid.
Well, that's another issue.
Yeah. Now, is the horse that won the UAE Derby, did he get the automatic bid in Japan too, or
no?
I don't know his form.
He got points.
He got points,
the other,
and then, but he
horse
get automatic from he doesn't get automatic from Dubai.
Well, because he got 100 points from that, was it?
Yeah, he's in.
You know, he's third on the list right now. I mean, that other horse, T.O. Password, he got the automatic invite from Japan, which I just think is ridiculous.
Stupid.
Yeah, you want to be if you want to be in this race, do it. Get in the way that everybody else did. Go and race in the points and get some points.
Yeah. But they want all that money that's being bet in Japan on the Japanese horse in the pool.
Well, there's still enough money in the pool without them. I mean, there's more, but for sure. But I just think that's just the wrong way to do it. You're leaving out a horse that's been on the trail trying to get points, and he gets bumped because there's an automatic bid for a horse that didn't get any points the way the others did.
Yep, I agree. All right, we have to move on to another topic, and each week we ask our listeners to submit questions for you guys if they have one, and that's what Tony in Texas has done. He sends us an email, and he says even casual fans can easily find the obvious considerations in past performances when they're handicapping a race. Things like race condition and weights and speed ratings and pace and all of those types of things can be kind of obvious. But he wants to know what you guys see as some important but less obvious things when you're looking at a horse race or trying to assess a horse. And Dale, he brings this up especially for you as a trainer. What are some of the things that you will look for that even experienced handicappers may tend to overlook or don't give enough attention to?
There's a couple little quirky things that if you're really a big-time handicapper, for instance, the pace in a Churchill Downs sprint race, if a horse is running 6 furlongs, they'll do sub-22. They'll go 21 and change, even I've seen 20 and 4s. But if they're going 6.5, you'll never see them break 22. And that's simply for where the gate sits. You have such a big run-up in the 6 furlong race, and the gate for the 6.5 sits almost on the 6.5 pole. So if you're handicapping pace and you've got a horse that's going 22 and change at the 6.5 furlong race at Churchill, this might be getting real technical, and one going 21 and change going 6 furlongs at Churchill, the 6.5 horse might actually be a faster horse or as fast if you're handicapping pace. And then if there's some tracks, turf courses, that have real biases. When we had a turf course we could use at Churchill Downs, when the rail was out, and that was always on Wednesday and Thursday, and they would take it down for the weekends. When the rail was out, speed always held, and I would always watch for that. Did the horse win on the lead on a Wednesday or Thursday, or did he do it on a Saturday where it really meant something? Or would they have a little advantage because the rail was out? But my key to handicapping is who the horses ran against. I think that's as important as numbers or anything, and I think and also where the numbers come from. So if I have a horse running at Mountaineer Park that's running 50 buyers and comes into Churchill Downs and he's running against horses at Churchill Downs that run 50 buyers, for some reason horses 50s never show up in the equation in the race at Churchill Downs. So I like to see who they're running against and the quality of the fields that they were against. And a lot of times you'll see a really good race as they didn't give a real good number, but 2 or 3 horses in it came back and won, and those are key races, and I would hop on those. So just a few little things.
Well, there's so many different things that you can look for. Everyone does it differently. I mean, I think pedigree is important. I think you look at a jockey trainer success rate, what they do together, how a horse does on a particular track bias. Some horse might love Churchill but hate Keeneland. Then, of course, there's always the thing that drives every handicapper crazy is the the little old lady sitting next to you that wins a ton of money because she bet her birthday, or because the color of her hat was the same color of the saddle cloth of the horse that won. Those things drive me crazy.
Yeah, handicapping in its simplest form. And, Tony, we really appreciate that question. If you have a question for Dale and Tim, you want to hear them debate something, you want them to answer your question for you, simply email it to me, mike@horseracingradio.net, and we'll be sure to get it worked into the show going forward. Topic number 3. Juvenile champion Fierceness rebounded from that disappointing Holy Bolt effort with a dominant 13.5 length wire-to-wire victory in last Saturday's Florida Derby. Guys, that begs the question, does that performance make Fierceness the horse to beat in Louisville, or does it make him the perfect horse to bet against? Tim Wilkin, what do you think?
Fierceness is a horse that is a head scratcher for a lot of people. It seems like he's off. He runs a clunker, and then he runs a big one in every other race. He ran a huge one, obviously, last week. Can he do the same thing at Churchill? I might have my doubts on that. Is he going to get the same kind of race setup that he got in Florida? I mean, I think he's going to have a lot of company with him up front. And you look at since 2000, there's been, I think, 10 or 11 horses that have dominated the Florida Derby. And most of them came back and run pretty well in the Derby. Exception, Empire Maker, who was second in the 2003 Derby, the funny side, he won the Florida Derby by over 8 lengths. Did not win in Kentucky. But every horse that has won by over 2 lengths in the Florida Derby has come back and run pretty well in Louisville. So I'm not going to say he's not going to be the one, but because of his resume, I'm not going to put every one of my eggs in his basket. Definitely a talent, definitely a horse to worry about, but he'd have to, he's not going to win the Kentucky Derby by 13 lengths. But yeah, it's a head scratcher for me on this horse. I don't know whether to use him or to throw him.
I don't think you can throw him. I don't think by any means you can throw him. I don't know if you single him. I think that he's a horse at post position will make a difference. I'd like to see him drawn more to the outside because he's got speed enough to clear if he breaks sharp and goes straight to the lead. But maybe it's not the lead. Maybe he just needs to keep the dirt out of his face and stay in the clear so somebody else guns to the lead and he doesn't get the pace and he just sits off of him, but he doesn't have any dirt hitting him in the face. He's not inside or behind horses. He could be just fine. But, I think the light switch went off the other day, and I think you're going to see him just go on he possibly could go on a big winning streak and just keep on going.
Just that little bit of indecision from the two of you, just that little bit of indecision makes me think that maybe he is the perfect horse to bet against when we get to the first Saturday in May. It's a toss-up right now as to whether he can duplicate that effort from the Florida Derby or anything close to it against a 19-20 horse field in the Kentucky Derby going 1.25 miles. That's the other factor. 1.25 miles changes things for every single horse that's in that race.
It could make it better for him. Might make it easier to get to the lead and keep on going.
He'll have to avoid getting caught in any kind of hot pace.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why if I would train him, I'd like to have him on the outside where he can just clock the other horses if there is an unrealistic pace. And I don't think he's the type of horse that has to be on a lead, but he didn't seem like he liked being behind the horses or inside. So if he could just sit outside past the horses, he'd probably do the same thing. They could collapse in front of him and keep right on going.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Dale, you said earlier when we were talking about the handicapping question that Tony had submitted, you said that you really like to look at the horses that a horse is facing, the competition they're facing. Do you think Fierceness faced the best competition in the Florida Derby last week?
I thought it was a solid race, but I didn't think it was good, really great race. But I haven't seen anybody that's beaten a field of really top horses. And it's one thing. If they're all running in Grade 1 stakes, they're running good competitions. So that's why it makes the Derby so great. They all come together and show which region was the best. You know, he ran against what they put out there against him.
Tim, what do you think?
Dominated.
Well, you know, it looks like, I mean, now that the race has been run, I mean, Hades, who came in undefeated, didn't show up. Now looks like he's not going to the Derby. Shug's horse ran okay, didn't really put a dent into fierceness. So I would think that the Florida Derby, when you look back on it, it wasn't the most solid group. Has there been a really good prep race yet? We might see it today in Lexington, but I'd have to question the strength of the Florida Derby field now that it's been run.
Yeah, and Dale brings up the point that he beat them handily, and I've said this many, many times. If you are Ohio State in football and you are playing a Division III school for your home opener, you're supposed to beat that team by 60 or 70 points, right? And you get concerned when they only win by a field goal at the last second. Fierceness was supposed to beat that field, and maybe he wasn't supposed to beat them by 13.5 lengths, but he did, and he handled his business the way he was supposed to. So I don't think you take anything away from Fierceness. I think he earned style points for the victory in the Florida Derby.
I
agree.
Yep. All right, time now to say hello to our good friend Nick Zito for this next segment. And Dale and Tim get to tell me if the following statement is right or wrong.
Right or wrong?
I don't know, Nikki. We'll find out right now. How about this, guys? Prominent owner and bloodstock agent Tom Ryan took to Twitter this week to present this idea that racing should take a page from other major sports and consider using remote stewards to monitor races via live video feeds to ensure rules are followed and adjudicated with more consistency. So what do you think of this idea? Would a central replay center be the right or wrong way for racing to go?
What do you think? Right or wrong?
Tim, what do you think?
Oh, man. I see it as a nice idea, but I don't know if it works, and I'll tell you why. Today, there are 19 tracks running across the country, and of those 19 tracks, one of them's a quarter horse track, but there are 174 races being run today. In the NBA, there are 4 games today. In baseball, there's 15, and there are 11 hockey games, which is a lot easier to manage if you're having a central headquarters to make decisions. I just don't know how it would be done with all these races going on to be able to have someone watching all of them. I mean, obviously there'd have to be a couple headquarters, I think, to do it, and that's going to cost money. And the other thing too, okay, yeah, you have people looking at them, but in the NHL and the NBA, MLB, there are penalties if you lose your challenge. You know, you challenge something. You know, in the NBA, you lose the challenge, you lose a timeout. NHL, you can get a penalty. NFL, you lose a timeout. In baseball, if you lose your challenge, you don't get another one. So, what would be the penalty if an owner or a jockey or trainer throws the challenge flag? And I just don't know what the penalty would be. I think we sort of talked about this before, but I think it's a noble idea Tom has, but I just don't know how it would work.
I don't know. First of all, there used to be a frivolous claim of foul rule. I haven't seen it talked about in a long time, where if you had a frivolous claim of foul, they'd fine you. But Tammy's been pushing for me to work on this through the HPPA and different groups for a long time. She thinks it's a no-brainer, but logistically it would be a nightmare. I think I agree with you, 100-something races. And it's not only the races that the fouls are claimed. You need to watch every single race and see which races the stewards didn't put the numbers up that maybe should have been a foul. The jockey didn't claim it. They still have a responsibility to make an inquiry on their own. But what I do think is logistically possible is, like in NFL or like any major sport, the referees are graded every week, and if they make mistakes, they're called in or they're demoted, or They don't get to work the regular games. I think there should be one central location of stewards that review the stewards' decisions and what they've made. And like that mistake that was made this winter in New York, the worst call I've ever seen in my life, someone should have been disciplined for that. I know one person lost his job. I don't know if it was for that. But if you had a review board that reviewed all decisions and took complaints and reviewed races, maybe there wasn't a foul called, I think that would be a lot better. And you should have a set of rules for looking at a race. You know, you talk to one group of stewards, they'll say, well, if it didn't affect the outcome of the race, they don't take them down. The other group will say, well, who's to judge what affected the outcome? If the horse moved over, if he did something wrong, he's coming down. We need one central set of rules on what makes a disqualification, and these stewards should be graded and overseen by somebody.
That's a good point. And I don't think it's a bad idea. I actually like the idea. Now, how it all comes together and how it would be handled is a whole nother matter, and I think that's what you guys are going for here. Tim, you mentioned the 13 baseball games taking place today. That's still 135 innings of baseball that those folks in the command center, if you will, have to be watching. So it's like watching a certain number of races. I think it compares favorably in that respect. But correct me if I'm wrong, those people in the central replay center are only getting involved if something happens on the field and there is a challenge or a close call that they want looked at from the replay center back in New York or wherever it is, correct?
Yeah, the challenge has to be made by a team.
Right, correct. Yeah, correct.
Like
so they're not
the NBA,
audited.
they do it.
So it would have to be
they do
made
it right on the court.
Yes, yeah, okay. So in this instance, it would have to be a challenge or an inquiry or an objection that was made on the racetrack. Then you could go to the central replay center, and those folks would have the opportunity to review and make the final decision.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think the idea has some legs.
It's not a bad idea. It's worth looking into. But I think it's a lot easier to start holding these people accountable.
Well, we appreciate Nick Zito joining us every single week here on the show for Right or Wrong. We'll bring that segment back again next week as we do every Saturday morning. It is that time of the show where each of you get to make your final West Point of the week, and brought to you by our friends at West Point Thoroughbreds. You know, owning a racehorse with West Point Thoroughbreds is a lifestyle investment for your entire family. It's a smart, fun way for new owners to enjoy being an instant insider and access the major leagues of racing for a fraction of the cost of doing it alone. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Timmy, what is your West Point of the week?
I just want to wish a happy retirement to racetrack announcer John Embrielle in New York. He calling it quits after 40-some-odd years. He had retired earlier, but just when they thought he was out, they dragged him back in, and he worked for a few more years. I would like to see him call one more race. Maybe he could do that during the Belmont Festival at Saratoga. I'd love to see him in the booth one more time before he goes.
Very good point. All I want to say is I really like our listener questions, and I want to ask everybody out there to start sending more. They're always good questions, and they're very thoughtful, and send us some more questions. And we should do a whole show just on listener questions.
Yeah, always better than the questions I come up with for you guys.
Nah, that's not true.
Hey, we'll take here. We'll take listener questions all day long. We do appreciate that. Guys, appreciate it here this morning. Have a great day at the races, and we're going to do this all over again next weekend.
All right, fellas. See you later.
All right, if you have a topic you want to hear Dale and Tim discuss, email it to me, Mike@horseracingradio.net, and we will get that worked into the show for you. I Ask the Answer is presented by the University of Louisville, Equine Industry Program, and the College of Business. I'm back with more. This is the Equine Forum on the Horse Racing Radio Network, where racing comes to talk.
Keeneland Sales proudly presents Spectacular Bid Week on HRRN.
When the spring meet ends, summer success begins. Buy, sell, fresh winners, hot prospects. One night, one chance. Finish strong. Don't miss out. the Keeneland April Selected Horses of Racing Age Sale. Friday, April 26th.
Hi, Tony.
Hey, Matthew.
There's a reason why Tony's Steaks and Seafood is my favorite restaurant. It's because I want to feel part of the family. Isn't that right, Tony?
That's right. There's a saying on the wall that I truly believe in. There's always room for one more at our table. We just want you to be part of our family.
And believe me, you will be. It's Tony's Steaks and Seafood right across from Triangle Park. Visit them at TonySteaksandSeafood.com.
Hi, this is jockey Brian Hernandez. For me, there's no bigger thrill than crossing the finish line in front, and nobody captures the excitement of our sport like Horse Racing Radio Network. Each week, HRRN brings you exclusive talk shows, podcasts, and in-depth conversations with the biggest names in racing, jockeys, trainers, owners, and more. Plus, HRRN is committed to helping disabled riders through their support of the PDJF. So climb aboard a winner today by visiting horseracingradio.net.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Well, remember that the April issue of Blood Horse Magazine and Tablet is out, and it features 130-plus pages, which includes some incredible features. You can download a copy of the April issue now from the Blood Horse Magazine Tablet app via the App Store or Google Play, and order a copy at shop.bloodhorse.com. Busy 3 hours. Thanks for being with me for the whole program. Can't wait to get to it later today. The Wood, the Santa Anita Derby, the Bluegrass Stakes. If you missed any portion of the show, head back to the website. Check out the podcast when you get some time, and do that on every podcast platform. My thanks to all of our guests for making this show possible, including Dale and Tim in the previous segment, Kurt Becker for that great stroll through racing history and the visit in the first hour of the program. Joe Kristufek was with me. You heard from Robert Clay, and you heard from Jeff Chapman, and so much more. Again, check out the podcast if you missed any of that show here this morning, and good luck at the races later today. My thanks to my producer, Lee Delapina, in our Lexington studio, and to Chauncey for handling all of our social media. I'm Mike Penna. I'll talk to you next week. Go Steelers.